You guys ready? Okay. This meeting is called to order. Welcome to the Wednesday, March 26th regular meeting of the Board of Education. I ask that we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silent meditation. I'm going to turn the silent meditation over to Ms. Holpe.
Tonight, I'd like to dedicate our moment of silence to Willie Green. He is a Sachem alum, a Sachem parent, and a Holbrook firefighter who unfortunately passed away the other day. So this is just in honor of him. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm turning the meeting over to Ms. Trombetta to present the We Are Sachem Superintendent's Report.
Good evening, everyone. I know we have a lot to get through tonight. On our agenda, we're going to be recognizing some of our music students, but we're going to hold off on that for a little bit. A bunch of them were on field trips, and they're going to be here in a little bit. So we're going to jump right into the budget presentation first. And Mrs. Sarakis is going to do that. But welcome.
Okay, so we're going to jump right into budget draft number 5. We're going to review our revenues, our tax levy, state aid, and other revenues, and then where we are with our expenditure codes, how the budget has changed from the last presentation, which was our March 12th presentation. And then we'll also review the tax levy cap, what that means to the average homeowner here in Sachem, proposed capital projects, some tax cap piercing scenarios, and then we will have our Proposition 2. We just received wording from our attorneys on what that's going to look like on the ballot for May. So first, the tax levy. This is what was submitted to the State Comptroller's Office back on March 1st. It is a tax cap compliant levy at 2.2005%. It's important to note that within this tax levy, we do have that transfer to capital line item for $9 million. And I've said it in each of the meetings where we do have an expense for $9 million to do some capital work within the district. We also have the revenue side of that, which is the $9 million in our tax levy. So we have received questions where when we have a gap, why don't we just pull that tax, transfer to capital line item out? But if we were to pull that out, we also have to pull the revenue piece of that out. So it really is a wash, doesn't help to close the gap, and it really does not do anything to help us preserve our buildings and our grounds. So that was submitted with to the State Comptroller. If there are any changes, that can be revised up until June. State aid, we have not received our final budget proposal from New York State yet. They are supposed to adopt their budget on April 1st. We don't know if it will be a timely budget, but some of the adjustments that we made in the state aid category is that we have been hearing that the foundation aid projections for the final budget are based on the enrollment data from Beds Day, which is the first Wednesday in October. And the original projections from the governor's budget are based on our claim form estimates that we submit to the state back in September. We have heard from several sources that the change in that enrollment data is a decrease of 83 students for Sachem. And, okay. Thank you. So that 83 student reduction would equate to approximately $559,000 reduction in our foundation aid. Since we are set to adopt the budget at the April 9th meeting and we have to work with the best data that we have right now, we did pull that $559,000 out of the first line, that foundation aid category. So you'll see where we're at a 2.5% change in foundation aid, whereas in the governor's budget proposal, it was 3.09, I believe. Okay.
Michelle, that wasn't confirmed now, right? We're just taking a proactive approach to.
Correct, because if the think it went out again. If the state budget is delayed, and it has been delayed in the past, we're required to adopt our budget by April 22nd. So we can push that date back a bit, but just, in case our next meeting is scheduled for April 9th, and that is scheduled to be the budget adoption meeting. So we're just being proactive for that. Oh, there I am again. Other revenues, we made several changes in the other revenue categories. One of them is we were reducing our interest earnings from the $3 million that it is currently this year down to $2 million. But based on projections that we've worked on in the business office and the fact that interest rates were not coming down as quickly as we anticipated, we did bump that revenue item back up to the $3 million. We also received some donations from the last meeting. Now, normally we don't include specific donations within our revenue sources, but these donations, the $21,000, were to specific programs based on the meeting that we had last time, specific to the 25-26 school year, and we have received them. So that's why we included those in our other revenue sources. And then we did have the E-rate reimbursement of $1 million in the prior presentations. After some work with the IT department and the business office, I think we're going to turn it over to Ron to talk about why we eliminated
Thanks.
the E-rate funding.
So there are two factors on why we took the E-rate funding out at this point, and it's really to protect the district's interest. The first factor is in speaking with E-rate themselves, this money is just not guaranteed. We would be, quote unquote, hedging our bets if we put this in as a revenue item into the budget. It's just not a guaranteed revenue. It's got to go through a review with a organization called USAC, which is a government entity. And thinking back many, many years ago when we applied for these Category 2 expenditure reimbursements, we back then also had to go through the same thing, and I don't believe we were fully funded. The second reason why we took the E-rate funding out is because if you thinking about if we did get funded, let's say we did get funded as an example in the 25-26 school year, we would not get funded certain BOCES aid in the 26-27 school year. You have to remember, these are technology expenditures that we're getting aid back on, and we go through Eastern Suffolk BOCES. So that's how BOCES fits into this picture. So 25-26, yes, we may get some E-rate funding. It could happen, not guaranteed. We would be taking that away from BOCES and directly contracting with a vendor. By contracting directly with a vendor, we would not realize our full BOCES aid potential for the following year.
So that's why we removed that line item, because there wasn't a guarantee and it was jeopardizing
Yes,
our
it's
BOCES.
just too risky for the district, we felt.
So this is how we came up with our other revenues. There were no other changes in there.
Michelle, I'm just going to stop you for a minute. Going back to the state, the one before this, you have public high cost, excess cost. Could we have a reduction of $867,000. Could you explain what that is so the community understands that?
So there are a couple of factors that play into that. These are our students. The high cost students are our special needs students that have expenditures that are above a certain threshold. And the state has increased, every year they increase that threshold. So it's always a moving target we're trying to catch up to. So let's say for 25-26, that threshold is $57,000. So we get aided on any expenses over that $57,000 based on a percentage. Now that percentage that we get aided on has gone down because the district, according to New York State, is becoming wealthier. So our wealth ratio is going up. And as our wealth ratio increases, the state's sharing portion for Sachem goes down. So that is a combination of the threshold increasing and the state giving us less funds for those expenses.
Does that number usually stay pretty stable over the years, or do we normally see?
It can fluctuate, but not to
that much.
$867,000, no.
That was actually my question. I was wondering if the children that need that excessive care, we've seen an increase. I know people move into our district for our special ed. So I was wondering if we've seen an increase while the state is decreasing us in what they're giving us.
I don't know the actual, I don't think there are great swings in this category, but I could get that information for you.
Actually, I'm not sure the community at home could hear you, Michelle. Ron, could you just pass that mic over this way? 'Cause I'm not, we could hear you up here, but I'm not sure if the people in the audience could hear you.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah.
Somebody at home want to say? Okay. We're good.
So Michelle, just to be clear, our revenues only changed by the $21,000 donation from last go around, right? Because the $1 million in interest sort of neutralized the E-rate,
They
right?
washed each other out.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. So the changes from our last presentation on the 12th, we were at a $381.6 million budget. You'll see the biggest reduction we had since that time is our 25-26 BOCES commitments. And this is mostly related to our technology items. Now that we have the BOCES portal is called open, and we're able to go in and work with our IT department. We're really working with all departments on what their needs are for the next year. And we have seen some reductions in the technology COSERs. We've also made some significant reductions where we looked at software district-wide and worked with our curriculum, our technology, staff members across the district to see who's using what software, because we had many, many different kinds of software. And, you might have one building using one software and 14 buildings using a different software, but we're paying the full cost on that one building. So we did take surveys, we did look at usage, and then, made some determinations on where we can make reductions without affecting any of the instruction for the students. So that's where you see the biggest reduction there on BOCES. And then we had some increases in our professional services and employee benefit line items. And then you'll see here for middle school girls, Arrowettes and cheer, we did add back the fall season coaching stipends based on the donations that we received, as well as the invitational team participation and the golf and bowling offsite. So those were all funded by those donations, partly from donations and partly from this reductions in our BOCES commitments here. So any questions? So that's how we get to the $380.9 million budget where we are right now. It's important to note that what is not included in this item right now is the BOCES Arts and Ed budget line item. So we have been going back and forth between BOCES and PTAs. I know I've been getting a lot of questions, and there has been a little bit of confusion, I think, on the business official side. We have always been told by BOCES that we cannot receive BOCES aid on PTA donations or any donations or grant funds. You're not allowed to receive aid on funds that were not district funds. So we have never put in those donations directly into the line items for BOCES Arts and Ed. It's been something that's always been funded by the district. We do get approximately 51% BOCES aid on it. So for example, in the current school year, we have a budget line item of $800,000 for 24-25 in BOCES Arts and Education. Approximately 51% of that would be funded by last year's Arts and Ed expenditures. And then the remainder of that was being funded through the district expenditure line item. We would get donations from our PTAs, but those would get deposited. They would go on a board agenda, get accepted by the board, and then be deposited into the general fund, not specifically going against any line item code. It would just be a revenue source that would get closed out into fund balance at the end of the school year. That's the way this has been presented to business officials. So when we had a meeting with BOCES last week, and they were shocked that we were taking this line item out of our budget, they asked us, where did you hear that PTA donations are not BOCES aidable? And I said, I heard it from BOCES, and gave that person's name. They went back to that individual. There were some letters from the 1990s. All this information last night was conveyed to me that they sent it off to their attorneys, and it came back to them that they said, yes, they will be able to provide aid on PTA donations. So we get approximately 51% of prior year expenses back in aid, and then it would really just change the process of doing arts and education. If the prior year BOCES aid was thought of as seed money for the next school year, where we gave an allotment to each building to start with. And then once they use that allotment, you would have to have PTA donations for any additional programs. What we would have to do, if this is the direction from the board, if we want to budget just what we're getting back in BOCES aid and then rely on the donations to fund the rest of those programs, anytime there's a program that is contracted through any one of the buildings, that donation would have to come either before the event or shortly after the event, because once we use the initial seed money, there would be no funds in the code to pay the BOCES bills. So we would have to take PTA donations, accept them as a donation, and then do what's called a budget adjustment, increase the budget by that amount of the donation, and then pay the bills that way. So that's just thought.
So I was always under the impression that the donated PTA money was part of that pool that we were getting back, because PTA was always encouraged to purchase all of their programs through Arts and Ed. So have we been not getting our fair share back from BOCES
No,
all these years?
We've been getting our share, but the district has been funding it. So before 24-25, where we cut the budget down to 800,000, the budget was 1.3 million. The district was, if we have a $1.3 million expense, we had to have a 1.3 million revenue. So we were in a balanced budget situation. The PTA donations just came in as a donation and were closed out to fund balance in the regular closing process of the school year. But the district paid those expenses because the money was in those codes. So now we're saying we don't have that money in the code. We can, if that's the board direction, because right now we have a balanced budget. And if that reduction in aid stays as that reduction in aid, this is the budget that we're recommending. We could possibly use fund balance or reserves to start that initial for this year. It's about $350,000, and then take that going forward. But that would be a direction that we would need from the board.
I have a follow-up. So 350,000 is the 51% we got from last year.
Approximately, it's like 340
Okay,
and change.
and going forward, the PTA would give the money to who? To BOCES directly or to
No. A
Sachem?
donation to, as they're currently doing.
Right.
So they would make the donation, but those donations tend to come towards the end of the school year, or, after all of the
Okay,
programs.
I remember having to pay the
right?
bill. Yeah,
So that would have to happen throughout the school year now. So let's say, let's for example, say Tamarack is going to a play in November, and there were several trips or programs that came in between September and October, and now there's no more funds in their code. They can book that program, but they would have to have the fundraising and send the money to the district at that time, so that then the district could pay the, maybe like a month after the program happens. When the bill comes in, there has to be a mechanism for the district to pay it. In the past, we had budgeted that full amount, so
Gotcha.
it was there.
okay. Is there any way that this could possibly add more to that 350, like next year to be even more, if the PTA is donating a lot into that fund?
Well, we have had expenditures of about $800,000 a year that we've been funded on, so it would be more than that.
Right. Back several years, this was restructured because of direction of a former business official, where it seemed like we used to, and I don't know if you guys remember this, the PTA used to pay immediately. And then someone changed the system to make it later because it was being controlled more by district and less by PTA. So is there a way to make sure we're doing it the correct way so that we're not scaring the PTAs thinking the kids the presidents received a letter where they thought they were losing their entire arts and ed program. So how do we know going forward we won't deal with this again next year? Is this going to kind of solidify this line item?
We can get this line item. Nothing can be solidified. We don't know what's going to happen next year. but
Yeah.
we can.
I mean, listen, the line item could be put back in if that's what the wishes of the board is to do. But the thing is, there's still a cost to the district to fund it.
So would the PTA have to fund even more next year is what I'm kind of what I'm asking.
If the line item is what the aid is expected to be for next year, then once that line item is in,
Depleted.
then the following year, if you rolled that, then that, say it's the same, approximately the same amount each year, because it's been pretty consistent year over year, except
Okay.
for the COVID years. You would have that 300,000, but if the PTAs were funding at, they wanted to keep the current level, that aid would continue to roll in, but the process just would be different
Right.
because the
okay.
money wouldn't be in the.
And then my
Oh.
very, very last question on it. If we take it completely out, we're losing that 350,000.
We'll get that 350,000 for 25, 26, and then that would be
And then
out.
it's then
But
arts
then
and
you
ed-
wouldn't have
okay.
the expense either, which currently.
But
we
then
had.
the PTA would actually have to fund every single dime of it then.
If you miss, right. If you
Okay.
miss 1 year completely, then
The
there's
next
no
year,
aid
that
that
350
following
is
year.
on the backs of the fundraising.
Right.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Ed Meredith?
So I can imagine that there's people at home that are probably pretty confused. I was a PTA parent and in charge of my 5th grade and all of that, and I'm still a little confused. Many years ago, when I was in charge of 5th grade, we were doing a big 5th grade trip. I was able to get a better price on buses than what we were getting through BOCES. But I was said, no, you have to go through BOCES because then you get money back. Is the money, so maybe it's not this way on everything, but if BOCES is charging a premium and we could get the PTAs could get these things done for a better fee, would we be better off? Like, I know that that's kind of a loaded question, but years ago when I was looking at it, I was like, no, let's get the tickets this way. And everybody's like, no, you have to overpay for the tickets because then BOCES gives you money back. And if that money is not 51% better, like if you're saving 53% by getting the better price on the tickets and the better price on the buses, then I don't think we need BOCES 51% if we can do better on our own. But I don't know that you could always do better on your own. And these are the things that confuse people and make people think that there's things
Right.
going on.
There can be situations where you can get a better deal on something if you did not go through BOCES. But then, BOCES, to their credit, they do have many, many programs that you're not going to be able to
Okay.
find.
So it's
without
not
going through
always
BOCES.
that you'll get better prices because that one just always stuck with me because the prices for like
the
the
buses and stuff.
the
are-
buses and the tickets for the musical in 5th grade. We paid a lot more than we should have. And then I was told that it's because you get money back, which is great. But, that was our 5th grade getting money back for the next year's,
And it's allowable expenditures. So not all of the arts and ed expenditures are allowable expenditures. Now, try to get a list of what's not considered eligible. That's difficult.
And then that was my other question is like, we're budgeting 800. We say it costs us about 800,000. And I'm not a mathematician, but if you take 300,000 away from 800,000, it's not 51%. So that's where my next question was, why does it seem like there's a discrepancy there in money?
It's eligible expenditures.
Okay. So not everything is.
Not
so-
everything is.
There is a chance that our PTAs could be better off doing it the other way, but nobody's ever been shown that other way. So maybe they don't realize and they get scared and think that there's not a better way and there just might be a better way.
Any other questions?
Okay, so this is the chart that I show at every meeting, just expenditures by object, the $380.9 million. It's a budget to budget increase of 1.77% or $6.6 million. And as we like to point out, you'll see the salaries, the top line item is $178 million. That's the largest expenditure in the district. And that is an increase of 1.89%. So that is growing at less than the rate of inflation. So any questions?
Questions from the board? Just one thing. I know years ago when we were in financial distress, materials and supplies were cut, okay? And it was very difficult for staff members to, get paper for their classroom and get materials. we feel that we can cut it $437,000 and still be able
Yes.
to.
We did not touch the instructional supply codes, and we took the reductions off of materials and other materials and supplies, but not things like paper. Like we know we need paper and things like that. But the
And
instructional codes were not touched.
And we're using a lot less paper because everyone has their own laptop, Chromebook.
Okay. So the summary of our revenue and expenditures, again, this shows it as a balanced budget with the reduction in the state aid. You'll see that we have $875,000 in coming out of two of our reserves. That's the $1.75 million for the proposed change in the transportation limits. That's going to be our proposition number 2. If that proposition passes, we're looking to revise those limits for the 25-26 school year, but we have to budget for it just in case that proposition were not to pass. Okay.
Board?
Michelle, I just want to go back to the materials and supplies. You said it's not the paper, so could you just give us a couple examples of what it might be? Like that's cut?
Some of it is from our facilities codes, not custodial supplies and things like that, but just wherever we could trim back, we did. Looking at the business office,
So
it's not just office supplies, but a lot of it was office supplies.
Is any of it classroom supplies?
No, we did not touch the instructional supplies. So all of our K through 12 supply codes were left intact.
Michelle, can you expand more on the Prop 2 since last time we're here and tell
I have
the
a slide
community?
on it.
Okay.
I have a slide towards the end. Okay, so under this budget, this is a tax cap compliant budget, as I said in the beginning. So what does that mean to the average homeowner in Sachem? If you look at the bottom at that 2.20% increase in the levy, you're looking at between $141 to $180, depending on the town that you live in for the year in the school taxes under the tax cap compliance. Okay, any questions on that?
Questions from the board? Ms. Esternia?
This is very good.
So Michelle, in the $380,985,606 budget, what is not in there that we currently have this year, or what? Last time I saw a number like that, there was a number of things that were not included. Is this contemplating increased class sizes, reduction in staff?
So we have about 16 FTE in staff that were reduced. We had some reductions. My prior presentation.
Michelle, were they all from option 2 that we voted on with a few modifications for the donations?
We made the modification for the donations, but so items that were reduced were some of the unemployment costs. Last year, we hadn't increased that significantly due to the abolishment and attrition of many of our positions, but many of those individuals came back as leaves, so we didn't recognize a large part of that cost. So we were able to reduce those line items. Some of our tuition, out-of-district tuitions, we were able to reduce. Our custodial substitute budget was reduced a bit, and waste disposal and things like that. So we were able to make reductions. We did the changes to the chaperoning, the way some of the events are going to be chaperoned with some of our security. So things like that were changed.
Okay, so can we go back to our state revenue, state aid? Okay, so based on what your understanding of what's going to happen, the difference in our state aid is $690,000 total. That's what we're projecting, right?
Correct.
That's how much more money they're going to give us for next year than they did for this year.
Correct.
All right, so we can go to the expenditure line, expenditures. So if I'm looking at that correctly, our employee benefits went up 279,000, roughly half of what they gave us right there, right? And BOCES is going up 2,059,000. So just those two things alone put us roughly $1.8 million in the hole, something like that, $1.7 million in the hole that we have to fund out of our tax levy.
Correct.
and we have no control over that. So I know there was a whole big thing about how much more money Sachem got in state aid from last year to this year, but the operative really question is not how much more did they give us, it's how much more are they asking us for, right? Because that already puts us in a negative. Can we go now forward to back to the not the expenditures, back to your last slide, tax cap compliant budget. So, and the way you're proposing that right there, we would still have, because you're proposing using 11.9 million of appropriated fund balance, and then another 1.75 of restricted reserves to cover the transportation cost, because that 1.75 is in your transportation lines right now, right? So, in the possibility that proposition does not pass, we would already be, I guess, about $13 million in the hole starting into next year, right? That's
Correct.
right. So we're doing exactly what our CPA told us not to do, right? He told us don't use your reserves to fund day-to-day operations, and it is possible that that proposal might not pass. So I think we need to be cognizant of that. But okay, I don't want to stop you. You got another.
Vinny?
So, yeah, Michelle, can we get a consolidated or updated list of the reductions? Right? Because I have this, but it seems a little bit dated. So if we can get that. And then also on to Mike, to your point, appropriate fund balance, that includes unanticipated revenue, right? Could we just
Yes.
understand what that number is? Because there's some revenue that we didn't count on that's in there, right?
Correct. So
So we're not using all of the savings. We're using revenue that we didn't anticipate. I get we're still going to be in a hole next year, but yeah.
correct. So we believe we're going to underspend the budget by about $6 million this year, and then have about another 6 or 7 million on the revenue side. So interest rates still are at a pretty high level. So we budgeted $3 million in interest revenue, but we've already surpassed that for the month of February. So we're anticipating 1 million will be in our interest revenue. We had many unfilled positions. That's part of the underspending, the expenditure side. What are other? We had transfers from capital projects that closed out under budget. So that doesn't happen every year, that those funds get transferred back to the general fund. So that's an unanticipated revenue. So there are things that we didn't expect that come in, which we welcome.
Any other questions? Meredith?
So we're not purposely holding back taxpayer money, and we're not purposely
No.
underspending our budget. Things come up, we welcome them every now and then. It doesn't happen all the time, and it's not something that we can actually count on to balance our budget.
Correct.
So
And the underspending of our budget, we underspend by about 2%. I mean, we say $7 million, and that is a lot of money, but it represents 2% of the budget. And the budget is an estimate.
And the fact that we were able to cut a little bit here and there doesn't mean that we were, overspending like wild hogs. We just were able to cut back and say, okay, maybe we can do without X, Y, and Z,
Correct.
not affecting classrooms.
Correct.
And we can just tighten our belt and do things a little bit better here and there. But if we save that money this year, it's not a given that we'll be able to save that money every single year.
Correct.
So again, we're in this situation. If Prop 2 doesn't pass, that's 1.7 million, 1.75 million. So that right there puts us in a hole of almost 2 million off the bat. And so these are all things, like, I know, because I hear it all the time, and I hear all this, there's a lot of misinformation being spread out there. We're not underspending on purpose. These are things that come up out of, and rates didn't go down the way you had anticipated. So that was a positive, but they are going to go down in the next couple of years.
Correct.
So
on the
what you
good
were
side,
thinking is gonna happen
we
is
do
gonna
receive
happen.
interest revenue, but on the flip side, we pay for our borrowing, and that
Right.
costs us money.
Okay, thanks.
Michelle, unanticipated revenue, what are you envisioning next year that we're not going to get back? And I know there's something about BOCES reimbursement, we're being told that
BOCES
number is not going to be the same next year.
Thank you. Yes, we get a refund from BOCES each year, and we are specifically told we cannot budget for that because it's not a given. all districts budget a small amount for it. So we had budgeted about $750,000 and we received, I believe, $2.3 million from BOCES this year. But they said, don't count on that because they're tightening their belts also. And because BOCES can't maintain a fund balance, any surplus they have to distribute to the component school districts based on the percentage of what their participation in the cooperative. But they already told us that $2 million. Don't expect that next year.
So if their enrollment goes up next year for special needs
Mhm.
students, and they open up another school, right? Obviously, all of the component school districts would get less back,
Correct.
and you know their population and their student body is growing as well.
It's growing because they're always looking for more space.
Any other unanticipated revenue that
What else did we
obviously
I mean, we did get a little bit more in some of our state aid categories, but that's right. So we received a premium on our borrowing last year, but with interest rates
Yeah.
in flux,
so
we don't know
so
that
we
we'll
pay
get that.
about $2.7 million
Correct.
to borrow the money to be able to
fund
pay and
our
fund our school
operations.
from July 1 to
To
December
January
31st.
1, yeah,
And that's only because the state budget is not on the same fiscal year.
as
As
the school
us.
districts.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that's $2.7 million that we would have to fund.
Correct.
Ms. Esternia?
Just again, looking at this slide. So that 11.9 is really about 5 or 5.9 is unanticipated revenue, right?
Yes.
So that's really no different. And then the 1.75, right? So you got, let's say 5.9 and 1.75 is 6. Almost 7. So in essence, you might as well have had put $7 million in the reserve line, right? That you're doing exactly that. That's what you're doing. So that 3.9 that 3.4 we used last year, we're almost doubling that this year, in essence, because that would have rolled into the fund balance.
Correct.
So when our auditor comes in October, he's going to say, you guys used almost $7 million in reserves to fund this year's budget. I keep saying we can't, you can't cut your way out of this. You can't cut your way into success. So we need to make some hard decisions, I think.
Alex?
Michelle, after last meeting, we had a couple people who showed up for parochial schools and busing and transportation for that. Can you just maybe update the community on where we are on that?
I do have a slide coming
I
up
didn't
on
see
that
that.
towards the end.
Is there? Can you maybe?
The prop 2.
I could wait.
I
could wait.
promise.
I could wait.
Meredith?
Michelle, I've been at this for a long time and I still get confused. So I'm sure that there's plenty of people out there that are still confused as well. When we talk about BOCES, we have so many different variables to it. So when we're doing things like this, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just clarify for the people at home and the people in the audience, because we ask people to get more involved, but then they must be sitting here like, what does she mean? She just said BOCES is giving back this, and she's saying that BOCES is doing that. And there's so many variables to it that we're not like explaining it properly for the people
So
at home.
there are many sides to the BOCES house. So we have our special education side. We have students that are full-time as BOCES students. Some are part-day students. Those are our special needs. We do not receive BOCES aid per se on special needs students. That is the high cost aid, the public access cost aid, things like that. That's where that aid comes in. The BOCES aid is mostly on our general education side and some of our operational sides. We contract through BOCES, our safety officer that comes through the district, making sure, nobody has those paper lanterns hanging from the ceilings in the hallway that could be a fire hazard or things like that. We have our CTE program, which is several $1 million that we send our students to. We have to pay a portion of the admin fee for BOCES. We get charged that to the tune of $1.6 million. That's for all component school districts that participate in the BOCES. We pay about $600,000 in a capital line item for BOCES. That's construction that they have to do in the properties that they rent from other districts. They charge that back to all participating districts. It's $5 million in our technology support. We have our software. We have our Chromebooks. We have our operational softwares, our instructional softwares. So our BOCES overall budget is about $23 million, $25 million of our budget.
Questions?
Okay. All right. So we had the capital projects on the prior presentation, and I apologize, I forgot to put on there that we did talk about the 2 new school buses because our spare buses are past the point where we can use them. So I just included them on the bottom there. We're still operating within the $9 million, but I just wanted to make note that we had talked about it a couple meetings ago, but we do need to replace 2 of our large school buses.
Did something get cut from that, or
We have that line item, other renovations district-wide, that was at $1.5 million. So I took
you just
the
took it from there?
280 out of there. Yes,
Okay.
correct, to stay within
where are
the,
the buses made? Are the USA made?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'd have to find out for you.
Because today, the administration put 25% tariffs on automobiles not made in this country. So
I'll find out. I'll
something
put
we
that
may
in the
wanna
Friday
move on.
letter.
Right.
Okay. Good. Okay. So the board had asked at a prior meeting, they wanted to see additional scenarios where if we did decide to go out with a levy that pierced the tax cap. So one of the scenarios requested was a 3.5% increase, and that is what a 3.5% increase looks like. I can't see those numbers. They're too small for me. So it would be an additional $2.7 million in levy revenue for the district at 3.5%. But what that would mean to the average homeowner in Sachem, you would be looking at anywhere from $225 to $252 per year increase in school taxes, depending on the town that you lived in at a 3.5% piercing.
2.2%.
Correct, correct.
So you're looking at an
That-
average of about, if you combine all three
$7.4 million
townships,
in total.
about $20 a month.
Correct, correct.
Question, Rob.
Vinny?
So with that, Michelle, what gets put back? If we're able to raise more revenue, do we
So-
have an idea of what we would put back?
We would have to look at the items that were being reduced. Most of the reductions were, like we said, the staff. We had about 16 FTE in staff that we reduced, but that is, we already put back in. That brings us back to where we are today. You know, the reduction, based on the reductions from last year in sports and clubs and things like that, that would keep us at where we are today, and there would be less reliance on fund balance.
Question.
Is that certain?
Michelle, in this scenario, would you advise them we do not take and let's presume Proposition 2 fails? Would you advise not to take that money out of the reserves then and use it and just absorb it here with this extra money?
That's
That's what it would be for, to prevent the use of reserves, right?
right. You would have an additional $2.7 million. So if the Prop 2 didn't pass, you would have to be going out at the same time. So if the proposition passed and the pierced scenario passed, you would have that 1.75 million you wouldn't need to take from your reserves, plus you would have an additional $2.7 million that you could reduce your reliance on fund balance or bring back other programs.
Any other questions? Meredith?
So basically, if we go out with cap compliant, I live in the town of Islip. My taxes will go up approximately $106. My school taxes will go up approximately $160 a year.
Everything held equal to today, assessed values, equalization rates, and things like that. Yes.
But if we went out where we pierced by what you're proposing in here, it would be the difference, $92 for the town of Islip. So it'd be $252 instead of $160, not $160 and then $252.
I have that on this slide right here to show the incremental between the different scenarios.
So it would, for somebody like me, it would make about $100 a year difference. And then that keeps us where we are maybe not putting back a million things, but we're definitely not taking from reserves every year like we don't want to do.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thanks.
The board could opt to restore some stuff if we wanted to.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
you know,
You're
the
going.
arts, BOCES arts,
But if we-
something like that, we would be able to,
But if we do that, then are we going to be in the same boat where we're borrowing Peter to pay Paul next year?
well, you're going to be in that situation, okay, if, either way.
Because I just want to be
We're all
clear.
relying on
Like,
state aid,
if we pierce the tax cap, I don't want everybody to think that it's like, the roaring 20s and we're going to spend and bring back. We're proposing that pierce so that we could equalize ourselves
So that
each year.
3.5% or the 3.7%, which is the next scenario, would help to close that gap, but it's not the, like we discussed last year, or even when I gave a scenario at the prior presentation of like 5.5%, where that's taking your full gap that we had several meetings ago of $6.5 million. That is the piercing that makes the difference. That kind of rights the ship. It puts us back in line with all the reductions we've taken, where we were stuck at 2%. Meanwhile, inflation was up at 4.9% and 4%.
And that
So-
few $100s that it would increase everybody's taxes is each year you can count on that few $100 increase. So if you're paying $7,000 now and you're going to go to $7,620, you're going to go to $7,000, $8,200 the next year. So it's going to constantly increase if you pierce the cap, correct?
Right. The same way with the regular levy.
By
The
a
levy
few
goes up by
$100s.
2.2%, and it compounds each year.
Okay.
That's your new starting point.
Okay, thanks.
So the
Any questions?
3.7%.
Actually, I have a question over Stephanie.
Either scenario is giving us about 3 million, a little under, a little over. It's still leaving us $10 million in debt. So that's what we have to look at, is that we're just stopping the hemorrhage, right? We still have a major deficit to recover next year. This isn't, I wouldn't even discuss, if the community was kind enough to vote this in, I would never even expect them to want things added back, because we still have to take things away next year. Everything that happened last year is funneling into this year and is going to funnel into next year. So it'd be irresponsible of us to say, okay, we have 3 million, let's start putting things back. We still have a $10 million deficit if either one of these was approved. Am I understanding that
That's
correctly?
correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this slide just shows the incremental change from the 2.2% levy to each of these scenarios, as we just discussed. Okay, Proposition 2. So there is a resolution on tonight's agenda for the board to authorize putting this proposition on the ballot in May. And this is to change our transportation limits for K through 8. The minimum distance for transportation would change from a half a mile to 1 mile. And for the 9 through 12 grade levels, the minimum transportation limit would change from a half a mile to 1.5 miles. But we would also reduce the maximum from its current 25 miles at the 9 through 12 level down to 15 miles. And that would give us an estimated savings of $1,750,000. We have been discussing with our legal and with state ed. I had a call with them today to discuss some of our options here. And one of the things we would be doing, we have 2 of our main parochial schools that would be impacted by this, which are St. Anthony's and St. John the Baptist. And we do have students that attend these schools that are within the 15 miles in the district. So that means we would have to provide transportation for those students. So since we're providing transportation for those students, we would need to provide transportation for all of the students. What would change would be that there would no longer be the bus stops from either on the corner near your home or something. That we would eliminate the van shuttles that would go around and pick all the students up. And then the St. Anthony students would go to Nokomis, the St. John the Baptist students would go to Seneca, where they would get off the vans, get on a big bus, and then they would be taken to their schools. The change would be we would have that centralized pickup location. There would be a big bus at Nokomis, there would be a big bus at Seneca, and it would be the parents' responsibility to get their students to that location, and then we would transport them. That's what the state requires when we make these changes.
What would be the cost of the additional, shuttle buses to
The $750,000.
750?
Rob.
Good. Sabrina?
So I have a couple of concerns with Proposition number 2. Number 1 is if it doesn't pass, that money is coming from our reserves, which I know every single person on this board has said that we shouldn't be taking from reserves. Our audits have said it. That's my first concern. My second concern is, Michelle, I emailed you and I asked you for the number of children that this is going to affect. Our public school students, not speaking of our Catholic school students just yet. And our numbers are going from 630 students who are walkers to approximately
2,800.
yeah, almost close to 3,000. 25% of our population is now going to become walkers. I have concerns with how many families that's going to affect getting their kids to school. I am concerned about the safety. If you've ever been to a drop off of pickup at many of these buildings, it's already very congested. And I know sometimes my heart pounds when I see a kid, walking across where there's a slew of cars. So we're looking at I know every building's going to be different, but we're going to have about 100 to 150 more students having to get dropped off or walking to school approximately. Again, one school might have more than the other. And then I'm also concerned with the transparency in terms of, I would like personally, if we are agreeing on putting this out there, that there's some type of map for every school so parents can see who's going to be a walker or not. I know this affects people in my development. I know affects me personally. Again, I know we need to save the 1.75 million. So as a board member, I understand the need to save this money, but there's a lot of questions here and concerns that I have. I just think that we have to be transparent. The other part that bothers me is that normally when we do a proposition, it's a full year to take effect. So it wouldn't technically be 25, 26, but this we are pushing through. So it's the time frame of where these parents who are CHM students, but then also the time frame for our parochial students to find ways to get to either the drop off or to get school. I just think it's a lot happening. I just want to say that if we are going to do this, we have to be very transparent with families, knowing that at some point in your child's career, you might not have busing, right? Whether it's for the elementary school, depending how close you are, middle school and or high school, so that the people know what they're voting on when it comes to this. I know we need the 1.75, but I also want to make sure that, we always get yelled at of transparency, that people know what they're voting on, because the last thing we want is in August that we get a phone call like, wait, my kid doesn't have busing anymore. They've always had busing. What changed? And I know it's responsibility on community members to stay up on this, but we also understand that people are very busy, work numerous jobs, just trying to get by. I just want to make sure that we are. I even know with Catholic school family, parents have reached out to me that they can't even get their child to Nokomis or Seneca because they work in the city. So now they're talking about pulling their sophomore, junior out of the school that they've been in for 2-3 years because of it. So there's a lot of repercussions, even though, again, the savings is great. There's a lot of other pieces to it that concern me as a board member.
Meredith?
So I have a couple of questions. One's probably for Allison. If we put something on a proposition, so I don't know how many people are aware, but when we voted in November, Suffolk County raised its own sales tax up to 8.75%. And because I'm in retail, people keep saying to me, I didn't know that happened. Well, if you don't check a box, then you automatically are voting for it. Is that correct? No? Okay. Because on that ballot, if you didn't check a box at all, you automatically were voting yes. So
no, on this ballot, they would have to check yes or no. If there is no vote on it, it doesn't count either way.
Okay. And the other thing is, even with this proposition the way it is, we're still giving more busing than is state mandated.
Yes.
So we've always given a lot more. Now we're just trying to give a little bit more. And I would like to see a map. I would love for us to have a map out there, even on our website, highlighting if you live on these blocks.
I
in
know
your
our
elementary-
routing software, Transfinder, I've seen the maps with the changing limits. I just have to see if we're able to print them by school where you can read them.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to put something out where it's very blurry, but there is a way I can work on that with transportation
Okay,
tomorrow.
because I want that to be out there for everybody to see, because it also affects people when they're buying houses. People might be buying a house in our neighborhood and they might think about that too. And yes, there's a lot of variables to this, and there's a lot of people that'll be affected, a lot more than when I saw that the other day. I was actually shocked by how few kids we actually had that didn't get busing. Because I grew up where there was very few buses. So I was shocked that we only had less than 1,000 kids out of all of our 11,000 plus that didn't get busing. And so now that does change it, and it changes it drastically, but it's something that people need to understand. Now, also, and I don't know if this is even a possibility in New York State because it happened in another state. This district had to cut busing completely. And then there was something where parents were able to pay. Is there something like that? Like, do we have anything? No.
I believe we have to provide transportation.
Okay. Because I sent it to all of you guys a while ago, even last year, because that's something that some other states are starting to do because it's getting very expensive to run these buses.
And we did look at the ridership. So we took the first week of March and we did a head count on all of our routes.
Right.
And we had about 60 to 63% ridership over the course of, a week's period. So if we're, providing transportation for 10,000 students and, 6,000 of them are riding,
right.
It's wasted space on those buses.
Because that's the other thing is like whatever's on here, we have to comply by. But, and years ago it happened, and it's why we cut the buses at the high school after school, because we were paying $750,000 and there was 20 kids riding those buses because everybody said, oh, my kid, and I live at the furthest point of this district. So I live just before Sunrise Highway and my kids go to North and I had to go pick them up. And it was because it takes forever to get on that one bus and get home. So yes, my kids would spend 45 minutes on a bus to get home. And so once we cut it because we weren't utilizing what we were paying for. So we're paying an enormous amount of money and we're not utilizing it the way that it should be utilized. But then when we want to cut it, everybody screams and yells that we're cutting it, but we have to cut something. And if we're cutting something that we're not using as much, that's why I asked for us to vote on it because, it's something that we voted on, 62 years ago or something? When
wasn't here.
everybody needed a bus because there was no sidewalks. It was a very different world back then.
Michelle, with
Okay.
regards to the ridership, if we do the survey and we find out that only 68% is using the buses, are we able to reduce the buses based on that number?
So
And what would the savings be on something like that?
I wouldn't have the savings just yet because we just found out about this. I think it was on Monday. We can put out a survey that says, do you intend to, use our buses for next year? And based on those surveys, we can see what the ridership is in the first couple of months of school. And if we see that we're at, 60% of our ridership, we can adjust those routes. We have to leave a buffer. So say you leave 10% in case, you have an uptick in ridership on one particular day, but we can reduce those routes and adjust that during the school year for the actual ridership. We can also put into policy where if students are not on the bus for say a 2-week period or a 1-month period or whatever period the board wanted to pick, you can say, all right, your child hasn't been on the bus for a month. We are removing them from that route unless we hear differently. So there are different things we could do to try to save on transportation.
Okay, Stephanie?
Is it possible to make the routes longer if ridership is down and then use less buses going to the same school, which would then lessen traffic, right, at the schools? So is there a way, could that actually bring a significant savings across the board? It just puts the kids on the bus a little bit longer, but for working parents, kids being on the bus longer is actually sometimes better.
We would have to look at that based on, because we do routes based on the different levels. So it would be something transportation we need to look at because when it leaves, if we have a bus that's running late at the high school,
Right.
it automatically impacts the middle school.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
the elementary from there.
Yeah.
Ms. Attorney?
So I share a lot of the same concerns that Ms. Pitkowitz expressed. And right now, every budget scenario that you've shown us, every budget scenario that you have shown us has the 1.75 million in it because we have to presume that maybe the proposition doesn't pass. I would think that, and I like what you were just talking about a survey and, surveying the ridership, but you would have to do that during the year where you had all these buses in order to determine whether we could cut back, right?
Correct.
So, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I think we might want to predicate. And again, as Mr. Pickowitz, a lot of concerns about who knows what's going on. We really should put some maps out. I think we had a woman came last board meeting and she mentioned this is very short notice for me. we may want to consider predicating the proposition that if the budget that's being voted on passes contemporaneously, whatever that budget is, that this would take effect in the 26-27 school year because the money is in the budget for it right now. And that would give us a full year to do this study of reduced ridership. It also would give people a year to understand what this is going to mean to them. So you might want to revise the proposition to say that it's predicated on the passage of a budget. If the budget passes and the money's there, we should provide the busing. So that's just something we might want to consider to alleviate some of these concerns.
And I guess we get a legal opinion on that maybe as to whether or not we could write the proposition that way.
We could. I mean, we've had a conversation with Mr. Isarni before this meeting, and he asked, "Is that a possibility from a legal standpoint?" And yeah, I mean, if the board wanted to do that based on what we've seen in the law, we could structure it in such a way that it's contingent.
Okay. Meredith?
Would there be a way, so if Prop 2 doesn't pass, if there, is it 2? If it doesn't pass, is there a way that we can ask of our public families what we're asking of our private families and parochial families, where we can lessen the amount of bus stops and that would save money? Is there a way to do any of that? Like, that way we're kind of asking the same thing of everybody in the district?
We would have to look at the ridership. If there's no available space on a bus, then we can't.
Because
do
we
it.
also hear, like, the first few days of school last year, we were hearing that there were 3 kids in the seat, which we dispelled that rumor that there were not 3 kids in a seat. We had heard other things, that kids were sitting on floors, and now, it's funny to hear from parents and on social media how kids are sitting on floors, buses are overcrowded, and you're telling us that we're only using 68% of our ridership. So, yeah, we have to, I guess, sit and figure a lot out.
Alex, and then we'll come back to Stephanie.
I mean, we just got thrown this just now. I mean, those numbers just came out Friday. So I know that one of our board goals is the safety and security of the kids, and to put close to 3,000 kids on the street to walk to school half the year in the dark. I just don't know if I could support that right now. I'd like to do a deeper dive into the budget and see what else is available, to Vinny's point, to see where the cuts are and kind of go from there. But even if we did the survey next year, and then it's the unfortunate part is the damage has been already done. We can't, how do we go back? What if we decide, what if the survey comes back and we say, it's not something we want to do. It's too late. So I think if you're going to do a survey, you do it similar to closing of buildings. You do it and then you make the decision. You don't make the decision, then do the survey. At that point, then it's too late. So at this point, I know that there's things that have to be cut, but this is not something I'm going to support.
Stephanie?
Our house is on fire, and I don't know how we could not address that. So now if we don't cut this, it puts does it put another 2 million into the budget, or that's part of the 13? It's part of the 13?
This is part of the 13.
So if it doesn't pass, we're 13 million in the hole. If it does pass, we're 11 million in the hole. The issue is this is compounding, and forgive me when I say this, but we've had poor decisions made 10, 15, 20 years ago that we're still paying for now. The building of East, like, this was an unfunded mandate that happened in 1998 that we gave ourselves, and we've been paying for decades, that is taking away from other areas of our education. Our kids don't have clubs in elementary school, and we're operating at a 25% in secondary. So I don't understand how adjusting it, like Meredith said, taking we're not going to the state minimum, but we have to make the hard decisions here with the community support and input, but it's still, we're just kicking the can down the road. And, do we want to have a discussion where we have to close 3 schools next year? Like, I don't want to do all this. We really have to make decisions that are going to have the least impact on the district as a whole. And I went to Catholic school in Sachem. I met my bus at Gate Lot. It was horrible. but it was something that we did because we had to. Whatever went on in 1998, I wish I could have been there and been like, what are you doing? You're saddling the district with a $2 million bill that's an unfunded mandate that we complain about all the time into perpetuity until we fix this and bring it back. We can't afford this. That's the bottom line. If I had a $2 million bill at home, I couldn't afford it. And I fully understand it's going to stink. So I don't know how to feel about this. We made this decision and now we're backpedaling.
Well, there's no backpedaling. This is just discussion. I mean, if we end up doing what Alex is suggesting, which is to do the survey, our next meeting is April 9th, and that's the night we're supposed to adopt the budget. So if we're going to look at, other areas and dive deeper into the budget, we better plan a couple more tentative meetings because we're not going to be able to.
Can we have a list of what we'll lose then? Of what, if this doesn't go through, this is going to have a greater impact on cuts.
It's already budgeted. It would be for the following year.
But
I think
if
she's
we,
saying for the
if we-
following year.
The
No,
following
not
year.
for the following year, because then we have to take more out of reserves. Why are we taking more out of reserves? We're hoping not to have the impact on reserves that we have right now. Right? Aren't we doing all this to lessen $13 million? That's what I was under the impression, not to start adding things back.
All right. So we're going to come to Vinny, and then we have Alex, and then we'll come back to Sabrina.
Yeah, so last year, March 9th of 2024, I sent the board an email and the superintendent, and I asked for a top to bottom review of what's contractual, mandated, critical, beneficial, and nice to have. I got blown off by that. We didn't do that. We need to do that. That's going to be part of the planning that we do with next year with the school closings, perhaps with the transportation. So I'm putting that out there now. We need to do that top to bottom because the response I got back was the majority of our money is in staff, right? We all talk about the fact that we can't touch our 178 payroll. No, we can touch it. We just have to reduce staff. And that's how you're going to do this without cutting more and more from the kids. We keep doing that. We keep talking about we have to, we can't touch that. We can. It's a reduction. And I'm sorry to say, but we need to go deeper. I've been saying that now for 2 years. We're climbing to 400 million. It's not sustainable. Something's got to change.
Alex?
Here's the email, by the way.
Stephanie, I agree. I agree with a lot of what you just said. I walked to Waverly as a kid. I was within that range of walking. But that was before cell phones. That was before, it is downright dangerous on the roads. We're going to send a 7, 8-year-old kid to walk 3/4 of a mile. What's the point of bringing what is an acceptable number for this board for kids getting accidentally hit by a car because, we wanted to save $1.75 million? I'm not doing it. Our job is safety and security. If that's number one, then that's number one. You can't just say, well, it's number one as long as the money's there. The safety of the kids has to come first. And I'm the only one on this board with no kids. And I've always put all the kids first. I'm not doing it.
Hold on a second. Hold on, Vinny. Okay.
Yeah, just to add, right, because a lot of our buildings are crossing major roads. You look at Furrows Road. If they walk to Seneca, they got to cross Patrick Holbrook Road. You got kids in the Farmingville area have to cross Portion Road, which is like a 4-lane major highway. So to Alex's point, it could be a safety issue. So,
Yep. Who was up next? Sabrina?
I'm not necessarily against putting this on the ballot for the community to vote. My point was to make, they need to understand that how many kids this is going to affect. We're taking a gamble. Like before you said with one of the things, it was poor planning to put something into the budget that we don't know what we're getting, but then we're putting this, we're going to put this out there and it might fail if we put it out there. So we're gambling with this also. It's not a definite. So we could put this out there, it gets voted down, and we're still taking 1.75 from reserves. So we're taking a gamble with it. For me, if we're going to put it out there, to put it out there right, where the families know that this is going to affect them. There's 3,000 children. And again, it might not affect kid A right now, but when they go to Seneca or they go to Sagamore, it might affect them then. So we really have to look at that and make sure the community knows that this is something that's going to affect them. And again, I think it really should be for that following school year, giving that year to plan this right and making sure that all the traffic flow at all the buildings are working properly. Because again, if you've ever been to any pickup or drop off at some of these buildings, it's bad. So, and then we're adding that additional 50 to 150 cars or people getting walking or dropping off. So again, my thing is I want to make sure that we're as transparent as we can so that when we put this vote out there, people know what they're voting on, because then going backwards is going to be difficult.
Meredith?
Yes, there's going to be extra, but you also don't take into account that there are plenty of kids that are supposed to be on buses and their parents choose to drive them. I know, but there's people in this number that are supposed to be on a bus, but their parents choose to drive them every day. And that causes some of what's
The
going on right now.
3,000 are pure walkers on top of the people. Then you're going to have
I
additional
understand,
people.
but
So you could have
some of
probably
those
5,000,
people are
6,000 people
already
driving
being
their
driven.
kids.
Some of the 3,000 are already being driven. That's part of why we have a ridership issue.
Only 600.
600
There's only 630 walkers
600
right now. correct?
current walkers, which increases to 3,000.
So
But
it's
what you're not
2,000 more people.
Well, what you're not realizing is that a lot of those, that chunk of 2,500, whatever it is, they are currently entitled to a bus and their parents put them in a car every day and drive them. So they are currently part of that loop every day at all of our schools. We're currently doing this with a lot of our children. And I know it because I have plenty of neighbors that are entitled to a bus and they drive their children for whatever reason. So hopefully we can get these maps so that it can show that, so that it can, some people can see where they are at. But do we also have a list of, because yes, we've already agreed that it's in this year's budget, and we've already agreed that we're going to, if it passes, we have that back in our budget. If it fails, now we have to find 1.75 million for the following year in perpetuity. Do we know what we're cutting that following year, or that's a decision that the next board will be making?
We would have to look at that next year.
That following year, if we get $620,000, the cuts will be greater. And that's what it comes down to. So Stephanie, and I'll come back to you.
My concern is that we're going to have to then turn into a school that has 31 kids in elementary. My kid was one of them. It has a huge negative impact on their learning. Forget COVID, having elementary school fifth graders have 31 kids in a class, it should be a crime. So what's worth the trade-off? That's what the community needs to decide. I have no skin in the game. My kids are older. I don't want to see this district turn into something where we have 31 kids in a class. We can't afford clubs at all. There's no after school opportunities with sports. Like we have to say what's valuable to this community, and then they can vote. So having the proposition on there gives them the opportunity to say, yes, we're okay with this, or no, we're not. And to Sabrina's point, having the transparency would help a lot in that decision. But we also have to see what are they going to lose if it fails. Because going back to 31 kids in fourth and fifth grade is horrible. It's horrible. Going back to having packs of kids sitting on radiators in middle school and sitting on radiators in high school, and it's just, I don't want to see us go back to that either. So we have to give the community the opportunity to make the decision.
Mr. Cerny?
This all circles back to my question that I asked Michelle, and I said to her, if we were to have a tax cap budget that pierces the cap, would she recommend that the 1.75 million come from that extra revenue? And that's why, and then I mentioned that's why I would predicate this proposition on it, not if that budget was to pass and this proposition was to pass, that it would be predicated on not taking effect until the following year. Why did I say that? I said that because it buys a lot more time to do a study that's necessary, right? Number two, we don't have to take the money out of the reserves. Number three, if we do a study and we realize, hey, we really shouldn't have reduced these buses, and the community says, no, I really need these buses back, I would put a proposition back on next May to invalidate the results of this proposition and go back to where we are right now and not reduce busing at all. Right. So in essence, if a pierced cap budget passed, it would help to pay for the transportation as it is today. That's where I would use the first 1.75 million of the money. But that's just me.
Okay. Any other comments on the board? Hi, Michelle.
Right. Just our next steps, unless we add some more meetings before the April 9th, that's when we anticipate adopting the budget.
The question becomes is how quick could you provide us with the information that you requested as far as diving deeper into the budget, and reducing that number? You know, you need a couple
I
days, a
need a
week?
couple days. Give me a
Okay.
Monday, Tuesday.
No, we're not scheduled for next Wednesday, but we could add it.
I'm saying we're already.
We're here for something else.
Yeah. We could do a tentative meeting for next Wednesday. That's what, April 2nd? Yeah. So we could schedule, if, you know, we're going to need it, you know, I mean, you know, I'm hearing a lot of different things tonight. At the end of the day, we have to make our budget meet, okay? I agree with a lot of the stuff that's here. Alex, I fought for late bus transportation a few years back in 2015. The board wanted to cut middle school. I had a concern about kids crossing Seneca, and I was able to save it. You know, kids that have to go to Scopolitas Drive and have to cross that very, very dangerous road, and we saved it. But the thing is that if we put the stuff back in, then we have to find those savings down the road. And once again, I mean, look, we worked really, really hard to keep our class sizes down. I mean, since I got back on the board, I think we lowered it by 3. And when we talk about raising it by 2, you might have a class go from 21 to 28. And that's not 2, that's, you know, it's 7 or 8 kids additional. So as an educator, it does have a big impact on your ability to reach every kid, touch every kid. And that's a big focus. I mean, we're an educational institution, and that's, you know, one of the things that we really should prioritize along with safety. Okay. But that should be our number one priority is you're really giving the kids the best education we could possibly give them. So there's a big ask. I think we probably should schedule a tentative meeting for next Wednesday. We're going to be here anyway, for 7:00 start.
So you're asking us to work on finding 1.75 million in different cuts.
And you would let us know how that would impact, you know, what changes would have to be made to our curriculum, to our
Well,
class sizes and everything
to
else.
start with, the one that changes since 312, that would be where it would go immediately. What we just added back
Would have
would
to come
certainly
out.
be the first thing that we'd be looking to take out in addition to, because that's,
Could you just touch base on what we did this year? We talked about increasing class sizes by 2. Could you just give us, you know, the community and the board an update as to where we're at with that?
sure. Looking at increasing class sizes by 2, Mr. Larson ran the numbers, and even though we'd be reducing 8 sections through attrition, we'd be looking to do it so it would impact only classes that were so low in enrollment that they still wouldn't be coming close enough to going above the 2 cap size, the target numbers. So it wouldn't impact. It sounds like when we say increase in class sizes, it sounds like it could be detrimental and talking about having, you know, very large class sizing. We looked across the district at all the sections, and by doing that, we identified the sections that were super, super low to begin with, that just met like just by 1 student going to the next section, and those are the ones we'd be targeting. So looking at the class sizes across the district, it would just be, I believe, Mr. Larson, if I'm wrong, 3 to 4 sections that would be cut, and that would be in all 10 of the elementary schools.
That's correct. And that's if we had to. We have some sections that are running consistently at, let's just say 21 across the board, across all sections where we have plenty of room to absorb in those areas. And then others where we wouldn't look to cut because it would add additional sections.
And we'd certainly be looking to not stay away from our K-2, K-3 classes the most.
So in essence, on paper, we wouldn't be increasing it by 2, okay? But we'd be looking to look at those classes that are really close and possibly add one additional student or 2 additional students.
Yes, because when we talk about that target number that Mr. Mbetta was talking about, sometimes we don't reach that target number.
Mhm.
So we have many areas that we're still underneath that target area where we do have room where this won't impact other areas.
Any other questions before we end this discussion? No? Okay. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you, Mrs. Sarakis. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Jackalitz in and our music students so we can do some recognitions.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. My name is David Jacklich. I'm one of the music chair people for the district. Tonight, we are honoring students who were selected for various honor ensembles across Suffolk County. In particular, tonight was reserved for 5th and 6th grade students who attended LISFA and SCMEA. And we do have a couple of older students here as well who weren't able to attend the night when they were to be recognized. LISFA stands for the Long Island String Festival Association, and SCMEA stands for Suffolk County Music Education Association. And both of these groups have honors orchestras, bands, and choruses where students from all over different school districts, the top students usually chosen by NISMA score, are chosen to participate in these groups. And they rehearse just a couple of times, and then they have the most fabulous concert that you've ever heard for these age levels. It's really very impressive. And I do want to say, you're going to see mostly 5th and 6th graders. Keep an eye on these kids as they go up, because these kids are going to be doing really great things when they get older. We do have someone here tonight who's in 12th grade. His name is Matthew Umbenhauer. Matt, could you just stand up for a second so everybody can see you? You just stand up for a second. Thank you. And Matt will join the picture when I have the other students come in. You can sit, Matt. Thanks. In addition to LISFA, Matt was also in NISCANE, which is all county for all of Suffolk County. And he went to All State and he's going to All Eastern, which I'll tell you about soon. And we have 2 students this year chosen for All Eastern, and All Eastern is 12 Northeastern states and Washington, D.C., all the top kids from all of those states in a single orchestra, a single chorus, and a single band. It only runs every other year. We haven't had students attend this in person since 6 years ago. So a very rare thing, and we're lucky enough to have 2 people here. And Matt wasn't able to make it to the meeting where we honored him, and so I'm so happy he was able to come tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to invite all of the students who are here to come on in, and I'm going to read their names once they're in.
I just want to add the reason where our middle schools are being honored tonight, in addition to the elementary schools, because the middle students that missed it last time, they missed it because they were performing in our productions at our middle school. And we just had our 3 productions this past weekend, 2 weekends ago, sorry, and they were fabulous. So not only are they very talented musicians, they are also performers.
So as they come in, I'm just going to read their names. So, and some of these students are in here tonight. I want to make sure we recognize all of them. So for LISFA in 5th grade, we have Alexa Ingrassalino and Caroline Payne. LISFA in 6th grade, we have Brielle Esposito, River Edwards Wilson, Raylan Umbenhauer, Emily Atria, and Hannah Rentz. For SCMEA Division 1, we have a lot of students. These are in 5th and 6th grade. We have Jace Hershaft, Vincent Malafronte, Mackenzie Daly, Daniel Reinhart, Jonathan Letford, Sean Kitterly, Abigail Masadi, Elissa Afanasevich. Did I say that one right? Did I get it? Kind of? Oh, I was so close. Okay. I really tried. I practiced. Riley Otera, Mia Buonanati, Mia Buonanati, Emily Enns, Brielle Esposito, Elizabeth LaFleur, Riley Lovner, Pranchi Patel, Vivian Rumble, Grace Stowecki, Julia Collins, Maribel Maramara, Matthew Pietrowski. I even wrote that down. Faith Seaman, Raylan Umbenhauer, Dylan Woods, Emily Atria, Nicole Biamonte, Nicholas Pantke, Kalani Wren, Hannah Rentz, Preston Lever, Isabel Solomon, Chase Edgar, and Caroline Payne. We also have a few middle school students who weren't able to come last time, and those who are here tonight include Cooper Berger, Yadiel Cabrera, Sean Foley, Mariana Pikowicz, and Alexis Cigarella. They're all from SCMEA Division 2. And then, of course, we have Matthew Umbenhauer. Matt, come on up as well to be in the picture. Thank you. I'm okay. How are you? 2 rows, right? All right. You're tall.
So you guys are going to come around this way.
Everyone starting with you.
Yep.
There's a section right there.
So some of the music, please, you guys can step down off the. Girls, one of you will just come around this way, all the way to this side. Good job. Nice hustle. Okay. All right, how are we doing? Come on, everybody. Okay, guys, look at me before the phone, okay? Look right here. Big smiles, everybody. Big smiles. Okay, that's okay. Pick it up. Good job. A couple more. Okay, and the phones. Don't move. Right to the phones. Congratulations. Yay.
Okay, we're back. Guys, if I know there's some discussions going on back there, if you guys want to move it out to the hallway, I'd appreciate it. Okay, Patty?
Now I'd like to invite Johnson Controls up for the EPC presentation. Thank you.
Thank you to the board for having us back for a quick little recap. I promise I'll keep it quick to 5 minutes if possible. Pratik, you want to just start running through? So we'll just go over the couple changes and answer any questions you might have. So jumping right into it. Again, just to recap, what is an energy performance contract? It's an agreement that allows school districts to take utility and operational costs and allocate them back into capital improvements. Okay, so from the last time, here's the biggest changes. The annual O&M savings, the third square, is $192,000. It was over $800,000 in the past. After the last meeting we had with Michelle and Pasquale and Scott and went through all the operational procedures that you use in the buildings to maintain basically the boilers and the control system. And we were basically overstating the savings at Johnson. It's on us. We use standard industry costs which are about, 10,000. But I forgot that at Sachem, you do almost all work in-house. So that's actually staff doing that work. So you guys do a great job saving money to begin with. So we lowered that down to 192,000, which Michelle and I agreed on. And the effect of that was basically itself was $70 million. It's now $60 million, which is basically a $10 million reduction. The annual energy savings went from 2,769,000 to 268,000, about an 87,000 decrease. Not that much considering we cut $10 million out. The annual O&M savings is now 192,000 that we feel good about. The IRA benefit is now $9.4 million, which is a number we're looking to guarantee. This number you've seen, it's moving around. It's because of timing. We're looking to safeguard the school district here. So what we want to do is guarantee this money for the school because timing has an effect here on the IRA from the federal government, whether we can get 5% done in the 2020 versus the 2026 year makes a big difference. So we're going to guarantee 9.4 million, but there's still an upside of getting up to 13.4 million. The positive cash flow on this job is phenomenal. It's over $27 million with a 17.8 year simple payback. Just looking at the, there's two different types of boilers. There's condensing boilers and then the sectionals. So in this picture here, you can see the four main boilers at Grundy. What we would be doing is going in and removing them in their entirety. And then we would replace those four with one Vantage, which is the big boiler you see there on the right. It's exactly looks like that. And then on the next slide, Pratik's, the Endura is also the picture on the right is what would replace the others. So what we're trying to do is go back with, in most cases, a bigger boiler, but with less of them so that you could save energy. And the buildings that would be getting the new boilers is Samoset, Cayuga, Grundy, Hiawatha, Merrimack, and Winona. So we'll be removing 15 and installing 10 in these. And on the other slide, we're installing 3. So a total of 13 new boilers. From the last project. And here's the rest of them: lighting, VFDs, energy management, and the solar. Everything else on here stays the same. All pays for itself and actually creates quite a good positive cash flow. And here is that cash flow. So again, last time we presented it, the taxes was a little over 6.4 million. It's now 5.3 million. Energy savings of 2.6 million and change with your operational savings and aid. First year, it'll generate a little over $30,000 net cash flow. At the end of the project, it'll generate over $27 million in cash flow. There's 2 other areas that can add to this. If the IRA if the project can happen quicker, the 9.4 has a chance to go up to 13.4 million. And that first year savings of $30,000 doesn't include any construction savings. So when we start the job, our plan is to perform the job as quickly as possible, especially with the lighting. We plan to install that aggressively because there are some the light. Your bills are going to go down, down, down. None of those savings are shown here. That's all extra savings that will go above and beyond what we're guaranteeing. And that's basically the entire update. I said it was going to be quick. I knew you'd have a long night. Questions?
Okay, Stephanie?
I don't know if I asked this before, but how long is the project supposed to take?
Actual construction?
The entire, like till it's done and we're seeing this money?
Under 2 years is what we have planned, about 18 months.
Okay.
The majority of it done in the first year. And then because the schools will be fully occupied, we're going to have to work around obviously the schedule of the school, and we do as much as we can. But when the winter months come, it gets darker and it gets a little bit harder to work outside. But inside, we plan to finish the lighting in under a year. Sure.
Danny, you had mentioned that in year 1, it's about $30,000 savings. Yeah. What are we anticipating in year 2, 3, and then beyond on average per year?
That's over and above after making your payment. So that's positive cash flow. It just keeps going up each year. Right now, we're showing year 3, the $9.4 million IRA money should hit year 3. It could come sooner in year 2, but I feel safer showing it in year 3. And that's a payment that would be made directly to the school district.
What about energy savings, not including rebate?
The energy savings is sitting at $2.6 million starting year 1, and each year basically it goes up 2%, which is a very conservative amount because your electric costs are going to go up higher, and the higher the electric costs go, the crazier it sounds. Your savings will go up even higher, but we were asked to use 2% to be cautious and keep it on the lower side.
And what's your guaranteed savings per year?
$2,682,217.
Okay. Other questions? Meredith?
It's probably for Michelle, but how does this get paid for? I know that we were saying last time that there could be different structures. We could take out maybe a lease where we wouldn't make payments right away until we started to see savings. Like how do these taxpayers who just heard about all these cuts that we have to make and all these things that we have to do, how do these taxpayers pay for this?
So we spoke with legal earlier today, and it's very early in the process to know how those would be structured. There can be, interest only or modifications in that first year. The nature of a lease, it has to be equal payments over the life of the lease, but the exception is in that first payment. And then there is an opportunity with the rebates where you can pay down that lease and restructure it, but it's all kind of too early according to legal to really know what that looks like right now.
So we don't know what it would increase the average homeowner at the moment.
So the lease payments are in the tax cap formula. They are, because we have current energy performance leases that we're still in the process of paying. It's part of that exception, that capital exception. So it would increase the levy for that lease payment, whatever that is.
Okay. But we don't know yet what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. Not yet.
And would this still be a project that we would be net zero? We were talking about that last time, even with all the boiler changes. And
Mr. Attorney?
Yeah. So if we don't know what it's going to cost us up front, how do we decide? When will we know that so we can decide whether we're going to move forward or not? I don't want to have to pass the bill to know what's in the bill.
Right. But that would be as we get more into the final contract negotiations, then we would have a better idea. And still, the district, we're under no obligation, like right up until you sign a contract. So speaking with Carrie Ann this afternoon, and Chris was there, it's so early in the process that I couldn't tell you what that actual impact would be on a taxpayer. But if we're looking at a lease payment of, $5.3 million, if it were, annual payments of that from the get-go, you can expect about 4.8% increase in a levy at 5.3 million.
Not counting a regular 2%.
That would inclusive. Other things being equal, if we just added a lease payment in that amount into our levy calculation, the increase would be roughly 4.8%.
4.8%. Okay.
Okay. Other questions? Meredith?
so we have to kind of like put this on as a item to vote on to get it to a point where we can understand.
No, you're
exactly what's in
not. You're
the
not
contract.
voting on it
Okay.
now. This was just an update into the changes since the last time they presented. So we're not
Okay.
voting on anything tonight. This
And
is just
that-
informational.
That IRA is like, what's the deadline? Like you said, it's like 9 million now, could go up to 13. At what point would we lose the 9 million? There's a chance to lose it because if you don't act fast, and what does that look like? And last time you were here, you said that everything was made in the USA, so we don't have to worry about the increase of tariffs.
factories in America to produce the solar panels. The funding, it appears, has slowed down, so they're slowing the release date of the panels to us. If it happens sooner, you'll get more money. If it doesn't, the worst you're gonna do is 9.4 million. There's only upside. And again, the project pays for itself all the way through. And I know I can't answer for Michelle, and I'm not gonna step out of line, but I'm just saying, the way they're designed is that they're paid for from the reduction in the energy savings and the coinciding matching state aid.
So when you say things like it pays for itself, but we're going to ask the taxpayers to pay for it, like if the taxpayers are paying for it up front and then we're getting the savings, that means, is there ever a chance that taxpayers would get some money refunded to them?
Usually not merited. Usually it's a lower tax levy or, yeah.
So the savings will all be realized for the district, not necessarily for the taxpayer. Sorry, I know I shouldn't ask. I have to ask these questions because it's, yeah.
It's an energy law that was created, and the whole purpose of it is so that school districts in New York State can make these type of improvements. And the way that they are funded is through energy savings. The other thing that you have besides energy savings is state aid. So we're not going to the taxpayers to ask them for anything. This is money that comes directly out of the.
Can you turn your microphone on?
Yeah, you can turn it. It is, it's just not. I thought I was pretty loud.
Yeah, no, you're on now.
All right. Oh, yeah, much louder. So they design the programs to work, and I'm using the word quite simply, whatever you currently spend in gas, oil, and electric, we're going to take from that bucket in the budget and use that and state aid to make the lease payment. When you ask the question to Michelle, like, what's the first year going to be like? And again, I'm probably overstepping my bounds and I apologize, but she doesn't know exactly because it's complicated when it comes to borrowing money, just like on a house. You have options. They don't know what the right option is for the school district yet. Typically, it's a 15-year tax-exempt municipal lease. You could do an 18-year. You could do a 20-year. You could do an 18-year, which makes the payment lower because the first year is always the hardest year to get because you're kind of waiting for all those savings to accrue. But then you're going to have a $9.4 million lump sum payment come in. You could re-amortize that entire loan and lower the payment.
So that was my next question, that it's a lump
Correct.
sum. We're not getting that 9 point whatever back over 17.8 years.
Correct. No, it's a direct payment to the school district. But again, I'm not a tax attorney, so I really shouldn't comment on it, so I won't.
Your best guess would be if we passed this year, we started working on it this year, that lump sum would be in our bank account in about 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of information. So what I'd like to see is I'd like to see a recommendation from administration, and we have an architect hired for this project as well. So I'd like to get the recommendation from our architect, Michelle, maybe your team, and then superintendent, so we can evaluate the business case and your recommendation, because there's a lot of information here, and we you're asking us to move quickly, but we have to analyze. We have to sit down. Some of us need to see it spelled out.
I
and
agree.
We really need a recommendation from administration, right? So that's what we need.
Matthew Bauman?
Did we determine that this is like a real true need that we have right now? Just with all the budgetary concerns, like, is this really the time to do this? Do we have to do it?
Well, we do need some boiler work. We have, our boilers are old. Many of them are not working. I mean, we did get through the coldest winter we've had in quite some time with the boilers that we have. Do we need to change, I don't know, 13 boilers or whatever it is at one time? No, not necessarily, but you're also getting solar and the lighting, which is something that we wouldn't get if we were to do this through capital. There's a lot of things to consider. We can spell that all out. Yeah.
Okay. Alex?
So you said the total cost of the project was 60 million? 60. So
Yes, sir.
That's a lot of taxpayer money, right? That's a lot of money that they trust us with making these decisions. And we've put people in place to make recommendations. We've put our architect in place who's also an alumni, who's had a great education here and knows our buildings in and out. And we're trying to get information to make this decision. And there was a meeting scheduled, and you guys wouldn't let our architect and project manager on the meeting. So how do we get the right information to us and move forward with that, with this kind of yes, when we can't get our people who we trust and put in this place in meetings like this? That's a hard swallow for me.
I understand. I'm not an attorney. And when there's multiple attorneys on the phone, we're lucky that Ingerman Smith will even invite us in typically on a call. Normally, when it's attorney to attorney, nobody's allowed on. We were invited in. John Grillo, your school district's architect, was invited in, and then SCC, a construction management firm which works with our competitors and others, was invited in. And our attorney said, I don't think this is a great idea to have somebody who works with our competitors listening in on how we negotiate and what we're willing to risk as a firm, that it just didn't seem like the right spot. So it was politely asked if they could be removed. And truth be told, and I'm only going to tell you the truth, they did ask for John Grillo to be removed as well, which was not supposed to happen. And I guess everybody got annoyed at that point and just postponed the meeting for 2 weeks.
I understand. And my issue is, like, we had you guys here, and I appreciate you waiting again tonight.
Yeah, no problem.
But I know that you guys want to get this done because of the savings. If the quicker you get it done, the more savings in your eyes that we'll see on the back end. But we can't get it done quicker if we can't get the information, and we can't get the information if the appropriate people are not on these calls. We can't have that happen in the future. So I know that we need some more information, but we need the people that we've put in place, we've authorized to be on calls. We need the information from the people we trust.
Right after that meeting, I made sure that they were both invited. I told our attorneys, please let them in, and whoever else wants to be in. This would be our 4th project here. So everything we're talking about, we've done here multiple times and proved them out that that they work and you make the savings. And if we're wrong, we will pay if we make a mistake.
Just a quick question, Danny. The IRA requirements, okay? In order to see some of that savings, we have to have a certain percentage of the job done within the first year. What is that percentage?
5%.
So 5% of the job has to be completed.
It's actually a very complicated tax law. So what I'm telling you is just high level numbers. 5%, it doesn't necessarily mean it. And again, I'm not a tax attorney, but I'm not saying it has to be installed. It could be equipment purchased and on site counts as well.
Okay. Second question I have is,
Sure.
you'd mentioned that, with the current administration cutting back on green energy. If during the review process at the state level, you're saying it takes 4 months, and we find out in that 4-month period, I guess a question for Michelle, we find out in that 4-month period that we're not going to get the IRA money and our savings is going to be significantly less. Do we have an out? Do we have to,
Yes.
once we sign a contract?
Yes, you have an out. You can cancel it.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, Stephanie?
So the proposed tax levy that goes into our base levy, right? The one that we don't have to ask the community to increase. It'll go into our tax cap. That's forever, right? Would that be in the next year and the next year and the next year? Like, would that raise our base?
So,
Would that reset our tax
Right,
levy?
yeah.
well, it's going to, let's make some assumptions here. So let's assume that full payment is going in that first. Let's make sure that
There we go.
we'll assume that full payment is going in that first year into the tax levy calculation, right? And you have that increase of, say, 4.8, 4.9%. That new base, that higher base, is where you're starting from each subsequent year, but you're going to have a $5.3 million additional expense every year. So it's not that it's not like if you pierced the tax cap and you needed the voter approval and you have this increase in levy, that now that's your new base and that follows year to year because you've had that increase without the additional expense. Here you have a corresponding expense. So it's not like, oh, that first year you get that big hit and then the next year, yeah, you still have all that extra money. You don't, because you have a corresponding expense in there. So you're really not.
And this
Oh.
is really, it's getting over my head, but is that expense factored into the savings there? It is?
It is. That's in the top line.
Okay,
the lease
all right.
payment.
So, but the increased tax levy every year, the additional funding, as if we didn't do this?
So in that first year, you see that big increase, and the way the tax cap formula works, once you get to year 2, it balances out. So you'd have the same with if you did a bond, right?
Okay.
You'd have the big increase in year 1, and in year 2, you'd go back down to say your 2% or whatever that would be. It would level off again, but it's at that new
But
higher
it's the
rate.
higher rate. So
Yes.
the people are paying that higher tax forever.
Right. Yes.
And is that calculated into the savings? Because not only is the district saving money, but the community's paying more for the rest of their life on their houses. Do you know what I'm saying? That's not factored into savings.
Right. So the savings to the district, like
Is the
Mr. Haffel
expenses
said,
that the districts have.
our gas and oil
Right.
and our electric bills go down, and that savings goes to pay for this new lease amount. But there is an increase on the levy side that will
Right.
stay there.
Right. And do we need that increase for something else? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if we're going to increase the tax levy, do we want to use it to pay for solar, or do we want to use it to provide things back for our students?
So the
Right.
difference with the energy performance is that this doesn't require a super majority. This is a regular 50% plus 1. Piercing in another situation would require that super majority.
Michelle, you do have the 10% extra state aid you could get too if voter approved. Just throwing it out there.
No, this is not something that requires a proposition. Yeah. Ms. Esterny?
Yeah, I was just gonna, Michelle, she just touched on it, that people have to realize that this is like an exemption from the tax cap rule. So even though that we might go out there with a 4.8% budget, you'd only need 50.1. It actually would be compliant with the tax cap law, because the tax cap law, the tax cap rules, this was provided for, so it would be exempt. You actually would only need 50.1, even though you're well piercing what would normally be a normal tax cap calculation. So that's just something
But
else.
this happens with every capital project.
Yeah.
So if we went out and we spent $8 million on boilers, okay, that would be exempt from tax cap as well.
It depends on how
Where it came from.
Correct. Right. Our transfer to capital, that $9 million is factored into the levy.
But these repairs that are desperately needed, we have a list of, how much is it, Vinny? $200 million?
About $170 million, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so these are things that have to be done regardless of whether or not we do an energy performance contract or we do it ourselves. These are repairs that have to be done. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, Danny, thank you for coming out, and
Thank you,
certainly
guys.
we will look at this in more detail once we get information and recommendations, and then we'll look to, if the board agrees, to put it to a vote, in an upcoming agenda. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Trombetta, in your superintendent's report? Yes, yeah. Okay, that brings us to item C, student board member report. Michael, you're going to speak on behalf of Scott as well.
Good evening, everybody. So the Sachem East Cardiac Room is getting new upgrades, such as new TVs. Sagamore Middle School has raised $14,000 for St. Baldrick's. Seneca Middle School has raised $7,000 for childhood cancer research. Sachem East and North's drama productions are having such outstanding reviews, with Sachem East lost Missy Robles and North's production of Anything Goes. Sachem East March Madness is coming up. The signups are now out. All forms and money are due March 28th. There will be dodgeball, basketball, a three-point contest, a dunk contest, and a faculty-student basketball game. We need a few more volunteers to help with the games and scoring them after school. So signups are up on the Google Classroom. And Scott isn't feeling well today, so now I'll speak on behalf of Sachem North. St. Baldrick's is this Friday. The school has raised lots of money in support for childhood cancer. We are very excited for the fun events to come up during this event. And Sphere Week has been announced for both East and North for the week of the 7th. So look out for information about both of these themes of each day. And Sachem East has all their posters around the school for all the different sphere days and their themes.
Thank you, Michael. All right. Just a piggyback, and it's more of a comment than anything. I know several board members had an opportunity to attend the plays and musicals at both Sachem North and Sachem East. Anything goes in Les Miserables. Okay, kids did just a fantastic job. I sat, and as many board members sat there in awe to see the talent that we have at both our high schools with our kids that are in the music department and the drama department is just absolutely incredible. So for folks out there that have not had an opportunity to see some of the performances and plays and musicals that our kids put on, I would highly recommend that you get to them and see the unbelievable talent that we have in our district. So, Meredith?
I'm going to ask that maybe in the future that we could kind of plug it a couple, like for a whole month beforehand. My schedule didn't allow me to go to anything except Les Mis, which was outstanding. I mean, even my husband left and was like, wow. And what I truly loved, and I say this every year that I go to these, is we really include every aspect of our entire district. And this year it was even better because not only did we have elementary kids, but one of our children was actually one of the stars of Les Mis, and she attends private school. So it's like we really got out there for the whole, and her mom's here. So we really got it out there, and we really included our entire district, which was amazing.
Matthew Bauman?
Yeah, I want to agree. Les Mis was unbelievable. It's my favorite Broadway show, and I've seen it on Broadway like 7 or 8 times, and it was such an amazing performance. So kudos to you. But I also want to. I got the. I had the pleasure of seeing the Addams Family at Seneca, which was also so phenomenal. I mean, these are middle school kids. What a show! Unbelievable. Everybody involved. Just amazing stuff. Great job.
And just one thing I want to turn into the silent, heroes, the orchestra in the pit did an absolutely amazing job.
The orchestra for Les Mis was unbelievable. Like they should. I hope they got paid. I don't know.
Yeah,
they were amazing.
Yeah. Steph,
I had
we have no money, but if we had money, we'd pay them.
I got to bring Chris, my older one who has special needs, and his best friend to Les Mis, and they made it to intermission, which I was stunned. They were enjoying every single bit of it. They were laughing at inappropriate times, but they thought the people running around fighting was amazing. They loved the singing. The only thing is, when we got to intermission, they thought it was time to leave. So they were like, "We're done." And I was like, "All right, I guess we're going." But it was incredible. No, but it kept them in the seat, which was they didn't leave. They had their snacks. I snacked them up from the concession, but it was incredible. The kids did amazing.
Vinny?
Yeah, and Rob, this is just a testament because a couple of years ago we brought in musical theater. So now you're seeing the dividends pay off. They're learning it, and they're talented to begin with, but they're taking it to a whole different level. So hopefully we can continue to invest in that and keep growing this program. So
just with full disclosure too, I like Matthew. I actually saw Les Miserables in New York City as well, and I actually dozed off by halftime. By halftime, yeah, by intermission. But I will tell you that my eyes are wide open, just in awe seeing these kids perform. It was just absolutely amazing. I did not blink at times. But Sabrina?
I don't mean to change subject because my kids are in all of those. They did a phenomenal job, everybody. But our robotics team did phenomenal this weekend at Hofstra. They ended up second place overall. So just, my son was kind of like a part-time robotics kid, but he's also in the play, so he didn't get to go to the competitions. But those kids, my son came home, he's like, they're smart. Like these kids are dedicated, and the advisors and everything, the time, the energy, 5-6 days a week, 5 o'clock till 9 o'clock. So, it's just amazing. And it paid off. They got second place. So, congrats to our, robotics team for their performance this weekend.
Michael, thank you for bringing up the play. It gives you another whole discussion, but
Yeah, I botched the name a little bit, but
that's right. Item D is approval of minutes. Any motion, please? Okay, Stephanie, second by Matthew Bauman. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And we do have some visitors tonight. Once again, the visitors will be held to 3 minutes at about 2.5 minutes. If you could just remind us that we have to wrap it up. First visitor, Jessica Schreck.
Hello?
Yeah.
I have attended Sachem board meetings for several years now, from COVID to closures to tearful board visits at our PTA meetings last year when my daughter's amazing teacher was on the list to be accessed. I have observed a common theme, a reactionary approach to whatever conflict or concern comes Sachem's way. I do not envy any of your positions and have no doubt that the most dedicated of you have lost sleep over them. Tough decisions need to happen. There's no denying that. But the approach that we take as a district has to change. Unanimously voting to remove our policy for public committee for school closures, and in the next breath, announcing a school closure, created unnecessary tension and divisiveness in the district. These emotional roller coasters are avoidable with advance notice and engagement of those in the community affected. We knew that we were not piercing the budget cap last year. Why was a committee not formed to talk about potential redistricting or school closures? New York State Department of Ed recommends that parents have a seat at the table for these conversations. We know our budget issues are not going anywhere. I won't pretend that fixing these issues are easy or clear cut, but our reactionary approach must change. When are we going to stop, pause, and engage the students and families who are affected? Engage the teachers who are now going to be expected to work miracles with huge class sizes or larger class sizes in the elementary schools. If you're cutting a club or a sport, why aren't those coaches consulted or engaged in possible solutions months before? It's concerning that last time we met, you guys didn't realize that they had to practice in the fall to win in the spring. You would hope that before you cut a program, you'd know for cheer teams. And planning for next year, for planning for the next several years versus reacting year to year should be the priority. I'm a Sachem alumni, a PTA vice president, a cheer mom, a troop leader, a parent of a child with an IEP, and most importantly, a taxpayer. I know Sachem, and I'm also a really positive, optimistic person. And we have some amazing parents, teachers, grandparents, administrators, and community members that want to help our district. Can we please get them at the table? Can this committee start for redistricting and possible school closures? Has that started? We need to get the right people at the table for these conversations. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne Eicher.
So I'm just going to echo kind of what Jessica just said. It just seems that there's a trend that we go to cut money and then the group comes to the next meeting. We don't realize how things work and we kind of change the approach. Can we get those people and those conversations happening before the items come onto the budget? We just heard a presentation about BOCES and it was explained, you know, what we'll have to do next year, but those things are already happening. The PTAs pay their bill monthly. That was a change that was made this year already. So it's not something that needs to change next year. It's already being made, and we don't even know that as we're having these conversations about that budget. And the other question I had was, I know you guys can't answer, but we did say just before that class size is still on the table, that it's probably going to only affect 3 to 4 sections, and sections that are low at like 21. And Grundy had that. Grundy has 4 third grade classrooms that will go up to 28 or 29. Where you're saying we don't have classes that will go up to that max, that is the numbers for the third grade class there. There's 86 kids in 4 sections. When will parents know whether that section is going to be affected? Because we're in annual reviews now, and that might change a parent's decision of what they're going to choose for their child IEP. So just the transparency on transportation, the same thing should be about these sections that might be closed. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Matthew Grunhouse.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matthew, and since 2010, my older brother and I have been very fortunate to receive incredible busing from Sachem to parochial schools. My younger brother attends Sachem Public Schools, where he has received a wonderful education with the services he needs. It has come to my attention that there will be a vote to reduce busing limits from 25 miles to 15 miles for parochial schools. Although there will still be a big school bus from a central location to school, there will no longer be minibuses to pick up students. I'm currently a junior at St. John the Baptist High School in West Islip. and I have many friends who attend St. Anthony's in South Huntington. This change might take away educational opportunities from countless students, and this could be devastating not only for the students, but for the schools themselves if they receive a drop in their student enrollment. Busing is a key factor in receiving an education, and without it, many of these students will have this opportunity taken away from them. When I applied to St. John's, I did so willingly, thinking I would have busing guaranteed for all 4 years of high school. And I love my high school, and I've been very grateful for my regular bus as well as my Sachem late bus, which has enabled me to be a member of the swim team, student government, and the after-school jazz band. Finding out just in the spring that you may have to suddenly transfer schools the following year because your transportation is taken away is unfair. It's not easy when you're this invested in a school to find out you will have to leave halfway through your high school education, especially at a school you love so much and feel so safe at. Additionally, these schools provide a supportive environment for students who may not feel comfortable or thrive in a public school setting. I speak for myself and all other students who attend these high schools when I say we don't want this option to be taken away from us. Although seniors may drive to school, it really would not be good to force a bunch of 17-year-olds to have to drive 20 miles each way, especially on days with bad weather or dark, snowy winter mornings on the Long Island Expressway or Sunrise Highway. Not only would this be dangerous, but it could be financially demanding as well. Additionally, younger students wouldn't even have the ability to drive, so this wouldn't even apply to them. I understand it is expensive to have minibus shuttles to pick up students, but I am asking at least if there must be a cut, if it is possible to at least keep the shuttles for the afternoon, since most parents cannot pick up their children at 3:30 from a central location every day, especially since this journey could be upwards of 15 to 20 minutes. Without a way to get to school, many of these students would be forced to unenroll, and they would not be able to attend their schools anymore. I'm saddened to hear about any cuts to both private and Sachem public schools. Every school, club, and district employee affected by the cuts is important. No one deserves to see the things they love being taken away from them. Therefore, I'm asking to reconsider these busing cuts as I speak on behalf of all parochial school students, for us and for our future, so that we may continue to have access to the transportation we need to pursue our education.
Thank you, Matthew. Ray Sanders.
Hello, am I on?
Yep.
I'm always on. Hello, friends. How are you? It's been a long night. Tonight, I'm here to stress the importance of keeping arts and education in our 25-26 budget. The programs are not just about enrichment. They're essential to developing the whole child. The arts promote personal growth and community understanding, helping students process and create meaning from what they learn. The arts enrich core curriculum, enhance learning, and provide critical connections across subjects. But beyond the numbers and policies, let me share a story. 8 years ago, in a Nokoma's fourth grade classroom, we booked a program called the Goldilocks Trial through Arts and Ed. This hands-on experience brought the judicial system to life, making learning fun and engaging. That same year, that same fourth grade class took a field trip to the Islip Courthouse, where they sat in a real courtroom, rode the elevator that the bad guys ride, spent time in chambers with Judge Biondi. That experience left a lasting impact. That year, my son decided he wanted to become a judge. So let's talk about numbers. We were talking about them a little earlier, right? Maybe I can help clarify how BOCES works in kind of layman's terms. In the 23-24 budget, Sachem spent $954,020 on arts and education programming and received approximately 51% in BOCES aid, meaning a rebate of $486,131. This year, the allotment of $456,474 was distributed amongst our 15 buildings. The funding structure is based on last year's expenditures, and once the initial allotment is used, PTAs typically step in to contribute additional funds, ensuring students have even more access to assemblies, performances, workshops, and trips, and more. There is something I gave Allison, which lists some of the current programs. There are over 40 programs that currently are in Sachem schools based on the credit that we receive from BOCES. So you get to see kind of real world exactly what's coming into the schools, because I didn't think you wanted me to read all those. Additionally, when field trips are booked through BOCES and not funded by PTA, they're funded by parents. But here's the key: the funds are all aidable. It means that the district receives a credit towards next year's arts and ed programming based on money the district itself does not actually spend. This structure maximizes financial efficiency while keeping the valuable programs available in our schools. So as Michelle said, typically PTA donates money through Board of Ed at these meetings. The way that it's being processed now is the funds that the PTA is giving the district for these programs are going into the district's general budget.
Ms. Sanders, you're approaching 3 minutes.
However, though the district is spending that money out of your budget, we are giving you that money on the back end, making you whole. So ultimately, the district isn't really eating the cost. Like, you're looking at $800,000 from the budget, but that expenditure is a combination of that BOCES rebate, the money that PTA is giving you, though it's coming into a different line item, it is still making you whole. So it's not necessarily cutting the district. And as you had said a little earlier, that part of that $1 million that we lose in aid is losing this. Once we lose that money, we lose these opportunities forever because they're never coming back. So I implore you to please, please, please reconsider this and put that money back. And as one of my PTA leaders said, we changed in October. Michelle and I had a conversation, and I spoke to our PTAs, and as the bills come in, they are paying them. So we're not leaving the district in a position where you have to lay out those funds now and not get that payment until the end of the year. So we want to support this. I mean, I think we had approximated that close to, what is it, $300,000 that the PTAs are contributing for programs. And again, even trips. When a trip is booked and the parents are funding and it goes through BOCES, that money is aidable. The trip to DC that our seniors take, if processed through BOCES, is aidable. So that's more money that you're getting back that can be kept in these programs. So there's no reason why we can't keep this and it not costing the district money. It's just a matter of working
Maria,
that out.
What we will do, and you have my word on this, we will look at this more closely, gather more information from our business office to see whether or not it's feasible.
And if I can help in any way, please don't hesitate to contact me, because I have a really good understanding of how that works. And we have connections in BOCES that can explain what we don't know.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maria. Margaret Biancoli.
I want a copy of this. Before you start my time, I'd like to have been able to applaud that young man, but I'm a senior on a fixed budget. And what he said is very important, but I can't pay for it. And you'll try to make me pay for it. Regarding the cap, we'll always match that cap. As far as solar, I have solar. I'm 6 years in solar. I love my solar. But have you considered making sure you purchase the solar and not lease it? Because leasing will increase every 2 years. And have you also considered warranty? Because in my 6th year, my solar is having problems. But I went from $200 a month to $17. So, and when it's having problems, the only way I know is that my bill is now back up to $200. Okay. So those are just 2 suggestions. And I don't want to pay for the solar. I'd love to, but I have copays that I can't afford. But that's another issue. So most of you probably know what I'm here for, from living right next door to Linwood Avenue School. So I'll start what I really came here for. In September, I saw you, and we discussed what we were going to do with Linwood Avenue School and the problems with the parents who are arrogant and refuse to follow the rules for safe entrance and exit into school. I sincerely want to applaud you and sincerely want to say thank you. One of the things you took responsibility for does not fix your liability problem, but it sure is a start. You have allowed your principal at Linwood Avenue, Mr. Wachowski, to create a system that is functioning smoothly. I watch the parents vroom, vroom, come and go, come and go. The buses are gone in a flash. When the parents over there that used to give me the finger and yell at me, who are now complying, look at me, wave and smile and give me a thumbs up instead of the other finger, I'm very, very glad to have been able to help that. It's wonderful. However, the problem still exists. In December, because instead of 20 some odd parents, there's 10, 15 on a day, ignoring what they're supposed to be doing. In December, as I'm looking out my door, I hear one of the parents who is trying to complete a 1 million point U-turn on the 16 feet she has to make it in so that she doesn't destroy my property, my neighbor's property, or whatever. However, she did hit my neighbor's mailbox. I was able to turn, see her jump out of the car, take a look at what was going on, and then she didn't do any damage. But I would have had her on film if she had done damage. Now, over the past couple of months, now that was a woman driver. There in the past couple of months, the men drivers, the fathers, two of them have decided they pull up to the dead end and don't want to turn around because there are cars now blocking them on either side.
Ma'am, you're approaching 3 minutes.
Okay. I asked you not to take away because I was a parent here and I am a taxpayer. So I am going to hope you will allow me to finish, which I am
We have
almost
to keep it
finished.
with
But
closer to
these
3 minutes.
backward drivers at 15 to 20 miles almost hit my neighbor backing out of her driveway. She went like this. I could see her almost get whiplash stopping. And the other one, at another time, there was an arrogant parent turning onto onto Mapleton from Woody Crest, and they almost had a collision. So today, I am here to tell you the town has taken themselves out of liability and have put up no stopping signs, not no standing or no parking, but no stopping signs on our street. My neighbors have signed off on it. And so if those parents continue to come, we will make sure that they are ticketed. And I believe there's already a plan to make sure that the parents are alerted, aware, and will no longer be able to drop their kids off on Mapleton Avenue. Do you know that there was a mother walking her kid, maneuvering around all the traffic, and her little girl went, oh, because a car making one of the million point turns had to stop in the middle of the street and almost hit that child.
Ms. Biancarlo, you have to wrap it up. We have
So-
other speakers.
In closing, please, there's only one solution left. You've helped, but you've not taken the district out of liability. Put up a gate at the end of Mapleton Avenue. Keep that gate closed except for emergency situations. 45 years, and I'll finish now. 45, and I thank you. 45 years ago, when the parents on Mapleton had that gate opened, our children lived on the block. There were 9 kids who lived on the block. And we could look out our window and see our kids safely go through there instead of walking all around the streets. On Pine Lawn, there were 12 to 14 kids living there. That is not the case now. There are 0 kids on our block who go to Linwood.
Ms. Biancalli, we will take a look
So-
at this situation. I appreciate you coming out tonight and sharing with us.
Please close that gate. That's all I can say because the parents are not listening.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight. Danielle Hassett.
Hello. Oh, it's on. You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. My name's Danielle. I'm a lifelong resident of Sachem and a graduate of St. John the Baptist. I'm here on behalf of all the parochial and private school parents tonight. I have 4 children, all in private school, 3 at St. Patrick's and 1 at St. Anthony's. I'm actually was pleased to hear the discussion today going on about the transportation and the opinions back and forth. Initially, we thought we might be losing it entirely. Now I see it may just be the feeder buses and late buses, which I do understand if Sachem as a whole loses that, we will lose it as well. But I feel like there maybe could be some other solutions. Maybe when I was in high school, Sachem was south and north, and I would get on the high school bus, and then I would get on a big bus from there. There was one bus for St. John's and one for St. Anthony's, and they would transport us. So we didn't need feeder buses. My assumption is that once the schools split, it's kind of hard to do that, being that I couldn't get on a big bus and go to east. I couldn't get on a public school bus and go to east because I'm zoned for north, and you would then need 2 buses. But maybe there's some way in there that only half the district going to St. John's gets a feeder bus and the other half for St. Anthony's, and they meet at whatever their closest high school is, if that makes sense. And you would only need half of those buses. I just feel that it's going to put a burden on the families. Again, for me, I have 3 younger children at home. So if I don't have that feeder bus in the morning, my choice is to leave my 3 younger children at home. So when my oldest was a freshman, my youngest was in 1st grade at 7:00 in the morning. My husband's a fireman. He works 24-hour shifts. So I'm faced with the choice of, do I leave my 3 children home alone to get ready for school while I drive my high schooler to Nokomis? Or does he get on the bus in the morning and then that bus takes him to Nokomis? So these are just some issues that I feel like those things are going to be a problem for a lot of families. And as Matthew had stated that, for students in 9th, 10th, 11th grade, if they don't have the transportation opportunity, they may be forced with changing schools in the middle of their high school career. Parents have already committed to this high schools, have already submitted deposits. Students have already selected their courses under the assumption that they're going to be provided transportation. The forms came out in January. They're due by April 1st. I'm pretty sure almost everyone, being that it's March 26th, has filled their forms out by now.
Miss Hassett, you're approaching 3 minutes.
Okay. My point just being that, to put this on for 25, 26 is very soon. There is no notice. There is no transparency. I think if we can put that on for next year and do a survey of who maybe needs a bus in the morning or who needs to be picked up in the afternoon. Most of us are working two income working household families that can't leave at 3:00 to pick our kids up. That maybe we could save some money there and just make it work for everybody. So I'm just encouraging the surveys and maybe speaking to the community and seeing how we can't give us some more time to make it work for everybody. I understand that cuts need to be made, but it's try to make it work for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hassett. Jay Jones.
Good evening. Thank you for, thank you for having me. Superintendent Trombetta, board, everybody here. My name is Jay Jones. I'm a Merrimack parent, Seneca parent, happen to be the Merrimack PTA president. I sit on Sachem Council as a community engagement chairperson, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of all of the elementary school PTA presidents. They wrote a letter tonight. I think it was distributed to you. So I'm going to try to quickly read it. I know I got my 3-minute cap here, but let me start with, again, thank you. We know all of these decisions are very difficult. And I appreciate you getting back to me a week or so ago, like within an hour. I asked you a difficult question and you had an answer for me. So I appreciate that. So here we go. The motto of the National and New York State PTA is every child, one voice. Today, the elementary school PTA presidents of Sachem School District are uniting to use our one voice in the face of the threat of yet another devastating cut. While we are aware of the difficulties that have arisen within our budget, cutting the BOCES Arts and Education program would be an extreme disservice to the students with a very minimal impact to help the current budget woes we face as a district. As PTA presidents, we work closely with our executive boards and committees to fundraise year-round. We volunteer our time to make magic happen for these children, volunteering our time and exhausting our energy to put smiles on faces. But our mission isn't rooted solely in the fun that is surprise ice cream at field day or hot cocoa around the holidays. A large part of the fundraising goes towards giving the students within our schools experiences like they would never otherwise get. They're given the opportunity to safely explore new venues with their peers and teachers, learning by doing and gaining knowledge outside of the four walls of their classrooms. Teachers are given the ability to bring their lessons to life, letting their students get hands-on learning time in unique settings where we're able to bring in assemblies where the children are gifted valuable lessons, often served up alongside joyous shouts and endless giggles. The opportunities not only enable greater opportunities for learning, but they also allow teachers time to engage their students in a new and meaningful way, thus strengthening the students and teacher relationship. That being said, fundraising is not complete solution. For years, the BOCES Arts and Ed program has bridged the gap between the fundraising and between fundraising and possibilities. Our schools invest tens of thousands of dollars into the programs to receive a fraction back in the following year. The budget accounts for roughly $800,000 to the program. However, the actual expenditures have been significantly less. The amount saved by cutting programs would be a drop in the bucket to the overall budget for the district. And have a vastly concerning impact to the students who attend our schools. Every student, one voice. I'm going to skip this part here. I'm not sure of the factuality of that. Every student, one voice. Cutting field trips and assemblies means some students may never get to experience a trip to the aquarium or a museum in the formative years of their childhood.
You're approaching 3 minutes.
Thank you. Every student, one voice. Removing BOCES funding means students may no longer see inclusive assemblies focused on building confidence or accepting difference. Every student, one voice. Are you prepared to use yours to tell every student what they're about to lose? Respectfully, typo 10 PTA presidents. Again, thank you very much. I know these are difficult decisions, but this Arts and Ed program is very, very important to us. I don't like reading to you. It's very important to us, so please, please strongly consider it. And thank you, Maria, for all you brought to us.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Item 3 after that, adopt resolution that was discussed in the previous meeting regarding resolution, avoid the expedition information regarding. Sorry, my mic was not on. Regarding, number of students affected and costs and diving deeper into the budget. So for item 3, our consent agenda, I would need a motion to amend it to table item 3F. All right, Ms. Isernia, second by Mr. Baumann. Any questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. That revises it to business consent agenda A through E. Okay, and then motion, please. Okay, Sabrina, second. Ms. Isernia, questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 4, we have personnel consent agenda A through I for teachers. Any motion, please? Stephanie, second by Mike Isernia. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. On 5, which is on page 10, personnel consent agenda A through G for support staff. Any motion, please? Matthew Baumann, second by Michael Isernia. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Mr. Scavo, if we could just take a moment for the community to be able to understand that the board has just accepted the retirement of 2 of our support staff on this agenda. One of them is Mr. Tom Pye. He is a custodian over at High School North, and he's retiring in May with just under 30 years. He is a person who's been integral on the team. He's been a acting head over in the building. He has an incredible sense of humor and he's reliable. I spoke with him just a couple weeks ago and he's super excited to go on his next journey into retirement. Would like to congratulate him for that. And wish him all the best. And in addition to that, we have Mr. Mark Laura. WSHR is the Sachem radio station, which broadcasts a wide stream across Long Island and all around. And the voice behind that is Mr. Mark Laura, who has also been working with our students who aspire to be broadcast journalists, areas of communication. We'd like to thank him for making sure to put that that interest in our students while he is retiring and moving on. And we know he'll have a hand in broadcast journalism and radio communications. Our radio station will continue to thrive as we offer opportunities for our students, and congratulate him on his retirement as well.
Okay, item 6, we have a personal consent agenda A through E for administrators. Any motion, please? Mike Lacernia, second. Vinnie Reynolds. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
All right, we do have a probationary appointment for Mr. Mark Mastropolo. He is taking over a probationary position vacated by Mr. Patrick Burke, and we wish him all the best as the one of our probationary high school secondary assistant principals.
Thank you.
And our leave replacement, who is Melissa Cameron Piccolo.
Thank you. Okay, item 7 is contracts. We have a consent agenda A through H. Any motion, please? Vinnie Reynolds. Second. Michael Lacernia. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
Hey, Rob, just one comment. So just for the community to know that we have just approved an agreement with the town of Brookhaven to demolish the Union Avenue building. So I think we're one step closer to closing on the sale of that. So I just want to share that.
Great. Item 8, we have an item, field trips, approval of field trips for the 2024-25 school year. And that's the senior trip. Any motion, please? Matthew Bauman, second by Alex Picarillo. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 9, we have consent agenda A through D for donations. Any a motion, please? Sabrina Pickowitz. Second. Stephanie, your hand up. Stephanie Volpe. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. We can get a letter out to those individuals thanking them. I know one is anonymous.
Hey, Rob, could I just,
Yeah.
is it appropriate to say who made those donations?
No,
But I don't feel like did
well,
we
we
say
could.
it out loud?
Yeah, we could. Sure. We have
I think we should.
2 anonymous donors. One for $2,175. The other one for $1,000. We don't really know who those people are, but they donated to be earmarked specifically for athletics in the program in our district. Another one is donation Orange County Transit, which is one of our busing companies, donated $12,000. After hearing the discussion last week, I think Michelle, you went back to them to talk to them about matching or at least donating money back, funds back. That town bus did so. Town bus item D. Town bus was actually in the audience last week during the discussion and saw some of the community members come up, particularly the ones that really moved that individual were some of the young kids that were involved at the Arrowheads and the cheerleaders, and immediately approached us after the meeting to say he was going to go back to his employer and ask for an $8,000 donation. So those individuals donated probably around a little bit more than $22,000, which allowed us to restore the middle school cheer, middle school Arrowheads. Also, the this one is for senior trip for yeah. So the first one actually is senior trip to pay for. I think is it 3 people, 3 students. So we were able to restore some of that stuff that last week was a discussion, and we thank them. And if we can get a letter out to them, that would be fantastic. Mm-hmm. Item 10, Committee on Special Education. We have a consent agenda A through B. Any motion, please? Matthew Bauman, second by Alex Picarillo. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Monthly reports. Anybody want to start? Stephanie?
Legislative committee is just a small one. We're on a smidge of a hiatus because Chris Ficcaro's doing the gala. So we figured we would reconvene after that's over. So that's one of the reasons for the delay. He has some ideas for the legislative committee moving forward, but we don't want to overwhelm him because he's doing such greatness with the gala. So
Okay, so you'll provide us an update once you guys
Yeah,
reconvene.
yep.
And let's thank Teresa for letting Chris have all his time. Appreciate it.
All right. Vinny, you want to update us on the budget advisory?
Yeah, we continue to meet as a budget advisory committee, going through the budget. We have our next meeting on the 3rd of April. And Michelle, I'm looking to do that in person because we're going to prepare for the budget adoption, where the committee then will come and make their recommendation to the board. So, okay. So that's really the update right now.
Just one thing, I know I don't get to all of the committee meetings. I did get to legislator, and I did get to, but the last couple of budget advisories committee meetings, the community members that are on both of those committees are really diving in and really digging deep and asking great questions. And you know, we can't thank the community members enough to actually take the time out of their personal schedule to really help the district out with recommendations. And you know, I think the budget advisory committee sees the challenges that we face. You know, and they're gonna present to us their findings and recommendations. So, any other committee, Ms. Cerny?
Just there was an inquiry made. I won't reveal the inquiry because there's actually a legal question, but there was an inquiry made regarding a policy. Ingham and Smith is looking to convene the policy committee on the question. I've provided some input to them, and I guess we're waiting. We have not got the answer back yet, but we will look into that question that was posed by a community member.
Okay.
Can the
Sabrina?
policy committee also meet to discuss?
Policy Zone 800?
Yes. Since that's been.
Yes, that's
something
going to have
that-
to be looked at in length, right? So
Right. So if we can have a meeting to discuss those two policies and the
Absolutely.
wording of them.
I think the first question has to be answered because I think it's contingent on a time frame that's coming up. So
Yeah.
All right. Any other updates, board committees? Okay. Closing comments, Allison, anybody? Old business. I don't believe there's any old business on the agenda. Board discussion items. We went through them earlier during the superintendent's report. Future items for discussion. Okay, Vinny?
So one of the things I brought up, I know, Michelle, we had got together with a community member about a week or so ago with Rob, and we talked about one of the things I came across in the education law was setting up a charitable reserve. So that's one of the things I think we probably need to look at, right? If now we have the Sachem Education Foundation, if they're going to be donating grants, should we look into setting up a separate reserve account specific for charitable donations? So I don't know if that's a legal question. We can always maybe have that discussion.
Yeah, we had Michelle and I would taking a look at this together today. There's this thing called not a charitable reserve fund, because reserve funds are creatures of statute under the general municipal law. So there's no such thing as a charitable reserve fund, but there is a thing in the law known as a charitable fund. So you can have a school district charitable fund, but there are some restrictions that we would talk about today in terms of the operation of a charitable fund and what it can and cannot do. Right, Michelle?
Right. So the school district charitable fund has to receive unrestricted donations, and I don't know the full workings of the Education Foundation, but I believe it's that members of the school community would be filling out applications for specific purposes for donations, and we wouldn't be able to deposit them into the charitable fund because it has to be unrestricted. So when we were looking at that last week, and then I approached legal about that, thinking that that would be a helpful mechanism for these donations and tracking them. We're just going to have to track them separately, you know, accounting wise, set up different accounts for them, but the fund won't work.
We have enough restrictions on us as a school district. So I think that just like we accepted those other 4 donations, like you said, a method of tracking it, and then if people want to earmark it specifically, under that, your definition, the person that donated the money for the 3 students to go on the senior trip wouldn't have been able to earmark it for that. So I think that only hurts us if we were to do something like that. All right. All right. Good, Mary. Actually, let's go. Sabrina had your hand up first, and then we'll come back to you, Mary. If that's okay.
I just want clarification on something? It was brought to my attention that AP review was either being canceled or reduced. So I don't know if any of the admin could speak to that.
Absolutely. So I know there was buzz going around about AP review and also Regents review being cut. That is not the case. We have to run it at a reduced rate. Looking at how many students actually utilized Regents review last year, we're going to do a better job through our buildings keeping track of how many kids are actually accessing the opportunities that need this, that actually are signing up for the sessions. So we are able to reduce the amount that we budgeted for our Regents review. And for AP review, when we looking at it, what we spent last year was over $30,000 in AP review leading up to our AP exams. We know it's important, but we can't continue to spend at that rate and sustain that. So we did reduce the amount of hours, but we also we've explained this to the building principals that if there is a true need beyond those 3 hours, then we can look at it again to see if there's anything else we can provide, especially if our Regents review needs continue to decrease. We can shift the focus and the funding towards AP review.
Follow up on that. Is there also a way that to kind of look at how the reviews are being done that possibly students aren't attending as much, because sometimes a lot of it's do this on your own and then we'll go over it, where they're like, well, I could do this at home on my own. So maybe where if the reviews were a little bit more interactive, I can only speak to some personally. I don't know if that's the wide step, but maybe kids aren't going to them because of the structure of them, that they're not really working for all students. So if we could kind of look at how the programs are being run too, while you're doing that other.
Absolutely. And I can tell you that teacher to teacher, they structure them differently, run them at different times, and some get 40 students that are attending and they have to cut it off and offer another session, where other subject areas are getting, I had one last year that had one student signed up for it. And we ran it not knowing that only one student signed up for it. So we can't allocate 9 hours of review and paying for that for a staff member to sit in front of one student to get them ready for a Regents or an AP exam. The other thing we're also looking at is we paid this out of our general fund in the past when there are grant opportunities that we've already identified, which I'm working on and I have been working on this week.
Any other questions about that? Just one question I have. Look, I gotta be honest, I only found out about this today. This is not something that, unless I missed something in the packet, but my kids knew about it 2 weeks ago. No one said a word to me. I found out about it today from Ms. Pickowitz, and this is not something that the board ever discussed. I know I agree with you. We can't invest that money for one child, but we got to find ways of being able to provide a review, because what I'm hearing from kids is that, oh no, there's no review this year. And these kids signed up for this class knowing that they need the time to review in order to be successful with these AP exams. I go back to a point in time when I got on this board where the district paid for the AP exams. We used to pay in order to get more kids to take it. We used to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for those students to actually take those exams, and we lost that back in 2010, 2011 because of the budget cuts. But now we're reducing the amount of AP review, and I think these kids need it. These are kids that are going to show up for things. So the fact of one student showing up for a class, that means that we need to reschedule that and put it out, at a time when more kids can attend. And so I'm concerned that, this decision was made. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know if anybody else on the board knew about it. I didn't know about it. It's not something I knew about. So I apologize if I missed it in the packet, but I think we need to be part of that decision next time.
So my understanding of how this was funded in the past was through COVID grant money, and that money dried up in April. So we do not have access to that money anymore to fund
Prior
things.
to COVID grant money, we used to have AP review.
But we also didn't run 9 hours per course for each of these review sessions. That was the lid, so to speak, had been lifted on how many hours they were restricted to. And the one student that I spoke about was between, it was for English Regents review, and it was 9 hours where one kid signed up for 9 individual sessions for 1 hour. So, and it was at various times with various teachers. Yeah. So like when we reviewed things like that, clearly we can shift those funds towards AP review to give more hours there. If you look at the number of hours that we allocated for AP review, it is comparable to when you look at the number of students, because there's a lot more students that require Regents review. They're all receiving roughly the same number of hours for review for both, not only the AP exam, but then also for our Regents exams. So that's why we structured it the way we do. We just don't have.
Are kids being told that there's no AP review?
I don't know where they got that from, because I only spoke to the principals on Thursday about this at our monthly administrative meeting.
Yes. Yeah, Michael.
I just want to say these AP and Regents reviews aren't being promoted like at all. They're only being seen like within the class for certain AP exams and certain Regents exams. I'd say like out of all the APs I've done, only 2 have had AP reviews, and same with the Regents, maybe like 1 or 2 I've had only Regents reviews for out of the 6 or 7 I've taken before.
Are they not available? Is that what you're saying?
They're available, but for only certain AP exams and Regents exams. I don't know if we're supposed to be having them for all of them, but I just know that we only have them for like only a few.
So, I mean, if we can get more information.
I can actually clarify on that. We have hours set aside, and the principals were given a list of all of the exams and how many hours are being dedicated to each of the exams. That needs to be promoted through the teachers that are teaching the AP exams, as well as the chair people for those departments. And by all means, I will follow up with the building principals to make sure that they're following up on that and advertising on whether it be the website, announcements, whatever it may be. But we've had AP review for every single AP exam that we've offered. I mean, even down to music theory. It's just the matter of it. This is the first I'm hearing that students don't know about them, or they're not advertising.
They've never been promoted for almost half the AP exams I've taken at all.
Do anything go home to the parents where they get a letter of these are all the classes and when the reviews are?
We've gotten nothing. I never even knew there was AP review for half the AP exams I have. If there was, like, I'm sure almost every kid in my class would have went if we knew that there was review for that AP exam.
So one of the things I know is that at open school night, it is spoken about. I know it's only a couple of minutes for the parents in each class before they have to move on to the next class, but it is mentioned, and I'm going to double check that it's mentioned for all classes, that there's potential for them to hold AP review and Regents review each year. But I know from the few teachers that I did follow up with, it is mentioned at open school night. That's why parents were banking on that there'll be AP review each year. So I'll make sure to follow up with the buildings, and hopefully you start hearing it in the announcements, and make sure you tell your friends to listen to the announcements. I know not many people pay attention to those announcements during passing time.
Well, Mr. Lawson, hardly parents show up for open house either. That's the challenge too, right? It's nobody shows up. They don't.
We want you to come, but we have about 25 to 30% of our parents actually attend open school nights.
I have a question, and I'm sorry, because can this be something that's added to the syllabus, mandatory? Because I know as a parent, I read every single syllabus in the beginning of the year, and that way I can say, hey, you have Regents review. You know, if I rely on my kid, he's not coming to school. So, you know, I would rather have like that, you know what I mean? And be like, yo, you're going, because that's the type of child I have. And I would assume, you know, IOP kids would want to go, but, you know, the Regents kids, they don't need it, in their opinion.
We can do probably one better, that we're streamlining communication with families for next year, that we still have to finalize. And that can be pushed out to all buildings, to all families in one shot next year, instead of our individual reminds going and school messengers that everybody's blocked since COVID. But we can do it through a streamlined process where everybody will get the information consistently from all the buildings. And we can do that centrally as well.
And could we reach out to our building principals tomorrow to express to them that we have to run it, but there's got to be a certain number of kids, you know, that to make it, you know, so we could touch as many, you know, help as many kids as possible. But, you know, that it's not canceled, and that, you know, we're going to continue to have it. My understanding is that some of the AP review classes probably should have started by now, you know? So if we can get on that right away and clarify that whole thing, so that kids understand that the opportunities are there for them.
We did, and so absolutely, and we got started last Thursday with telling them to start surveying through the classes to see how many kids were interested in so that we could gauge how many courses that we really need to do our review sessions for. So we're not in a situation where we have very low numbers and we're still paying for that.
Any other questions, Stephanie? Okay. Board future discussion
Yeah,
items?
I have two. Is there a way to get info if we could run arts and ed as a net zero? So that whatever money we get, they spend, and even though it's a cut, it's not impacting the budget then? Yeah, okay. And then another question, which has nothing to do with that, is there a way, what the parent brought up, of having the buses pick up the high school kids at East and North? Because, okay, all right. And then before and after care for the younger kids that are in private, is there a way to help the parents mitigate the issue of not being able to get their kids after school because we cut the buses home? So is there a way that we could offer them before and after care? The shuttles. So I know that they're older, but is there like, and I guess I'm using the wrong term because they're not little kids, but is there a way to have them, have a study hall or something in the building so that they don't have to?
By the time they get back, we're already dismissed.
Oh.
So we don't have childcare for
Gotcha.
anything above
Gotcha. Okay.
elementary school. And also to clarify, one of the speakers tonight said about their clubs and activities. We are running a late bus for high schools. We will be running a late bus for parochial schools as
Okay.
well. So
Okay.
that we're not asking them to not participate in their clubs and sports. That will be offered to them, just like we do for our Sachem students.
Okay.
Any
Thanks.
other future discussion items? Meredith?
So I just wanted to clarify about the Sachem Ed Foundation. The foundation is a charitable foundation on its own. They raise funds, which they're doing an amazing job of raising. And then they have our principals write in for a grant, and then they have a committee that looks over each submission, and then they vote on what grant is going to be given out. Couldn't that grant just go right into that school's treasurer? Like, we have to pay for a treasurer for every school. So couldn't it just go right into that? Because it's going to be for a specific school for a specific reason.
The extra class funds are completely separate and not district funds. Those are more student funds. So if the principal is writing the grant and the donation is being made to the district, it would have to come into the general fund as district funds. ECAF is completely separate.
I think what Meredith's saying is because it's not going to be where the principal or teacher will be writing the grant, asking to see if they get approved for the grant. Then the foundation is going to make a donation. We can then accept that donation and earmark it for that specific school, and we can play. I think you're asking, can we put it in the arts and ed money if it's donated that way? As a donation in.
Oh, yeah, wherever the donation is approved from, it could be, yeah, yes.
I just don't want to see them do all this work for specific things, and then all of a sudden it's all blowing up on us.
The charitable fund, we were just saying it's the accounting of it.
Okay.
So we when I was speaking with Mr. Venator, it just put those funds in a separate pot, so to speak, so that you can track it. We can do that within the general fund. We just have to make up different accounts.
Okay, thanks. And the gala is tomorrow, and you can still buy a ticket.
Any other future discussion items? Just going to ask for one thing. I know the board has gotten a couple emails on the girls gymnastics team, and one of the emails that we received, and I don't know that administration's on every one of the emails, but one of the suggestions from one of the community members who has a daughter on the team was to, why are we not opening our gymnastics team up to 7th and 8th graders, very much like how we open it up to field hockey and how we open up to soccer and so on and so forth. And if doing so, would that allow for more kids, to participate and get that number a little bit higher? Because right now, when I looked at that report from not this past Friday, but the Friday before, I think there was about 8 or 9 kids that participate in gymnastics. But if we would open it up to 7th and 8th graders, would that number then climb to 12 or 13, which is where our basketball teams are at? Our girls' basketball teams, I think, are at 12. So if we would open that up, what's that? Yeah, so if we open that up and we allowed 7th and 8th graders to participate, would that number now climb? Okay, and then would we be able to run it to give those girls an opportunity? Because my biggest fear is that if we eliminate it, it's gone forever. We're not going to get it back. Yeah.
The only question I have, and I'll find out from Gary and Phil tomorrow, are they different seasons, middle school and high school?
If
I'm
we
not
could find
sure
out,
on
it
that.
was a valid question from that community member, and certainly before we cut it and lose it forever, is there a way of increasing those participation numbers? So if everybody's okay with that, with that information, okay. Right. Meredith?
So I don't know what the proper way to go about it is, but Vinny brought it up a year ago, and now a community member brought it up tonight. How are we going to be proactive instead of reactive and get this committee going so that we have a lot of input? I know it got crazy when we had input, and I know that I've heard the old Sachem legends about what went on the committee, and that's probably part of the reason why we have East, because certain people wanted certain things, and so we have to be strong enough to avoid all those things, but we definitely need to find a way to get this done with input, because we keep talking about we're going to have to cut more. We're going to have to do this. If the Proposition 2 doesn't pass, then we have 1.75 more million that we have to cut. But we're not, we're talking about these things, and we're not putting things on the table and getting it out there.
Meredith, we said, and I said it, I think very clearly, maybe 2 meetings ago, that look, immediately after this budget, okay, is passed, we have to immediately start that process. Okay, now that policy 7800, the committee's going to look at that. The policy committee's going to look at that to see if we could do it better, so that instead of the 20 or 30 people that are selected to make that recommendation, that we have some type of public forum, several public hearings, where we could allow community members to come out and everybody have a voice instead of the 20 or 30 people that get on that committee. We already gotten requests from people to be on that committee. Okay, and some of the requests from the people that we have been very outspoken about certain schools closing. So my concern, and I've said this and I'll say it again, is that when you have a committee like that, where people potentially join that committee, to protect, their school, their elementary school, or their middle school, their high school, it's not always a true picture of what we're looking at. So I'm going to rely on that committee to really come up with a policy that really try and encompasses a lot more people, okay, in the process, so more people can be heard. Because it was a disaster. Vinny, you are on that committee, and that committee was, Vinny was selected as he actually was selected by me to be on that committee. And at one point, I know Vinny made a suggestion, and he immediately got almost mauled.
Heckled?
No, more than heckled.
That was my first entry into this stuff here.
And you still want to
here
be
I
on
am,
board.
10,
I
12
came
years
back for
later, I'm
more.
still here, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
So
So I think we start out with the demographer, right? I think that's
Yeah.
going to be the
Yeah.
baseline for everything we need to do. And that would then drive what you're talking about, Rob.
Because I just want to make sure that we just stay on top of it and do
Yes,
it, because
absolutely.
like even with our other committees, they tend to start later than they should. Like they should start the first week,
Mhm.
and
No,
then
we would have to start
so,
right away, Meredith.
yeah. So we
Absolutely.
really have to.
I think
get
we're all in
moving on
agreement
this.
with that. Yeah. So
Okay.
Rob, I think there was a suggestion from administration to use some of the funding that we get when we close on Union Avenue to actually hire a demographer to do that complete redistricting study and demographic study right up front. So that I think that was already a suggestion.
Sabrina?
Because I know Mike, Meredith, and I are on that policy committee. Is the board okay with policy? I'm sorry, I don't know the number off the head.
7800.
So if that policy, are we okay with saying we're going to have 3 or 4 forums where the demographer could make presentations, and then any community member can come and ask a question,
Express
speak,
their
whatever,
concerns.
instead of limiting it to a committee of 10 to 20 people? Are we on board with that? Like, so when we sit to do
Everybody
the
okay with
wording
that?
of it, we kind of have the idea of what you guys are okay with. Are we okay as a board? Just take a leaning if you.
Yeah, we could take a leaning. Like I said, that approach gets a lot more community people to have a say in that decision.
Yeah.
So we can go around. Mike? In other words, instead of having a committee of 20 people, okay, what we would do is open it up to the entire community and have public forums, so people can give their input as to, their findings and their recommendations. That's what they think. So it would encompass a lot more people to be able to weigh in on the decision versus a committee of 20, 25.
And also ask questions too about the study that we get back.
So you would have public
specifics,
hearings,
yeah.
public hearings, so people could, could voice their concerns.
Almost like how we engage everybody for budget time, where we go to the different schools, we have different presentations so that people can see exactly,
Right.
Maybe they can't attend or watch this, but then they can see it. Right? Is
Instead
that
of
what we're saying?
having, 3 minutes and then we can't respond.
Right.
Yeah.
Where a forum would be, they can come up, have their 3 minutes, and then we would be able to answer their questions, respond to their comments, etc.
Or just take their recommendations or
Right.
suggestions as
Right.
to how we could do things better.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that as long as there's like, people don't want to be preached to, and they don't want to say, oh, this decision's already been made, so I'm going to come talk. But then there's
The whole
is
purpose
my
of it,
input
yeah.
going to change what's already being presented, I guess.
Yeah, that would be the whole purpose of a public hearing, several public hearings, so people have an opportunity to come out.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen public hearings before. I've seen, I mean, this is what I do, but I don't ever see any change. So that's what I'm concerned about, that we do it, but it's kind of just like we checked the box and said we did it during COVID. I mean, we all put like 2 or 3 people on it, and it was nobody's fault. None of the board members, because we were expecting something different. And this was not the administration at the time, but it was a train wreck. I mean, it was a mess. So as long as I there's a feeling that people are being heard and some of what they're saying is being implemented within the plan, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Sabrina, did you have Stephanie?
Are there experts that help districts through this other than a demographer that we could get from out of maybe Suffolk County, out of Nassau, that we could call in, pay, and take the emotional part out of it and have them really look at what's going on, give us a real redistrict plan, look at every single school? Because,
Stephanie, we had that. We actually hired a facilitator at a very, very high cost.
From out of the area,
out of the
though?
area that
Okay.
does exactly what you're saying. He goes in and does school closure reports. He facilitates the committee, but the committee was so strong and so vocal that I believe that the facilitator was starting to be facilitated by the committee.
No, okay.
And so, and in the end, the demography came in, and any of the recommendations that the committee made fell by the wayside because they didn't look at certain things that, including transportation or passing a school or, to get to another school, the number of kids that, would be impacted. And then as a result, I mean, the 2 options that were put on there were 2 very different options than the committee actually
And how do we
recommended.
prevent that from happening again? Because I do feel that maybe these mistakes, for example, I'll give up one of my opinions. Was it preemptive to move 6th graders up? Because look at what the deficit it made in elementary right now. If those 6th graders were still there, we wouldn't have the lower enrollment that we have in every building. Is it the right move? I have no idea.
Well,
You know what I mean? I would hope that we have professionals to give us those opinions and those arguments. But having the community and the board, we're biased. Even if we want to have an open mind, it's still our schools. These are our students. It's emotional. So there's got to be a way to get the facilitators and the experts that come in to be heard and listened to rather than screamed at.
The demographers and the facilitators, weren't impacted emotionally at all. They came in and said, this is what we recommend. This is least impact on kids. And this is what we're suggesting.
But then the facilitator wasn't listened to or twisted into another opinion? No.
The facilitator looked at pure numbers and data to make the recommendation to the board as to which would be the most economical with the least impact on students. That's what, demographer, does have an emotional bond to any of the schools.
Right.
No,
But
what
then why
Stephanie's
didn't we
saying is,
listen to them?
Yeah, did we go with their opinion?
Yeah, the board went with that. Yeah, it was a 6-3 vote, and the board went with the committee.
With the facilitators and the demographers' opinion, no. They went with the committee.
No, the other way around.
They did. The
The
board
other way
at
around.
the board at the time didn't take any of the facility
Any of
study
the-
committee's recommendations.
They went with the.
They went with- I presented in Sagamore, 1,000 people yelling at us, and the board didn't take any of those. You were on the board.
Is that the
board did not-
appropriate way to do it?
The board did not accept
Is
any of
what-
our recommendations.
How do we
and
fix
went their
that?
own way.
How do we fix that situation from happening again? Because we don't want people cutthroat.
Well, that's
we don't want
the
people.
point of the board hearing from multiple
Okay.
people.
I get it.
From here,
Yep.
instead of hearing from 20 people, Okay, we would hear from the entire community as to
I
their recommendations
appreciate
and
that.
concerns. So
Yeah.
it opens
And it
up to a
gives
lot
them
more
the
people.
opportunity to ask questions. So if the, the demographer, whoever can answer the questions of why they've chosen this, so they can, anybody can come ask questions, give an opinion,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not being left to 20 people who might be biased. It's just really getting the input. So we're not closing the community off. They have a voice to speak, but we are, they can ask questions about why they chose and why they went with the route.
So yeah, so we're gonna charge the committee. We're looking at it, maybe even acquiring some samples from maybe the New York State School Board Association to see what they have, but also to try and come up with a plan or policy that includes a lot more people than the 20 or 25 people that we put on a committee.
I just went through this in West Babylon, and it was very controversial there, but they started in the summer. They formed a committee. They had a professional group that led. They did a pretty, in-depth analysis. If you close this building, this is what the transportation zones are going to look like. This is where people are going to go. These are going to be the class sizes. They accumulated a lot of information, and they made an unbiased recommendation to the Board of Education. And then they had 2 or 3 public opportunities for people to come up and voice their opinions. And thereafter, then they voted. I mean, it turned out to be a 7-1 vote. But I thought it was a good process in terms of, that type of committee. It worked pretty effectively, I thought, in the West Babylon School District.
Chris, do they have a policy for that? Is that something?
No, it wasn't
No?
even part
So it
of the
wasn't a
policy. They just
policy.
decided to do it on their own.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so we have clear direction as to how we want to go. All right. Any other future discussion items? Oh, Matthew, did you have your hands up? We didn't take a full inning. Stephanie, Sabrina, you already weighed in.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Matthew?
Yes.
Thank you, Matthew. All right. Alex? Vinny? Okay. Michael? And I'm fine with it too. All right, so it's unanimous leading. All right. Okay, any other future discussion items? Yes, well, I have that down. Yeah, tentative meeting. Does everybody check the calendar for 4/2? Okay, April 2nd. April 9th is our anticipated adoption of the budget, but we can actually adopt as late as April 22nd. So I hope we don't have to meet on April 22nd, my 30th wedding anniversary, and my wife will kill me. So, but we could adopt up to that date. All right. Everybody okay with it next week? Okay. So we're going to be here at 6 o'clock for interviews. Okay, and then 7 o'clock start of the meeting. All right. All right. At this point, I need a motion to go into exec session to discuss litigation regarding the replacement, or the installation with a vendor of the Sachem East roof. Motion, please. Okay. Meredith, second. Matthew Bauman, all in favor? Opposed? All right. Motion's carried. Have a good evening, everyone.